What do you do when everything falls apart? When the plans crumble, the future goes quiet, and you're left standing at zero with nothing certain but the next breath. Most people panic, some give up, but the Stoics saw rock bottom not as an end, but as a beginning. Welcome to the ultimate Stoicism guide to rebuilding your life from zero. In a world where we're told to fear failure, Stoicism offers a different message. You are stronger than your circumstances, and rebuilding begins within. This guide is for anyone starting over, after loss, after failure, or after simply realizing that something has to change. Here, you'll learn how to face your situation with courage, take ownership of your thoughts and actions, and use timeless Stoic principles to rebuild a life rooted in meaning, purpose, and inner strength. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need the right mindset and the first step forward. Let's begin. Imagine for a moment that someone is shouting at you, insulting you, belittling you, but instead of reacting with anger, you simply smile calmly, feeling completely in control. Not because you're indifferent, but because you've learned to master your emotions. This isn't just a fantasy. It's a skill that can transform your entire existence. Think about it carefully. How many times have you ruined your day because of someone else? A misplaced comment, a disrespectful attitude, an unexpected betrayal, and there you are, giving away your mental peace to someone who doesn't even deserve it. Why do we allow others to have so much power over our emotions? What you're about to discover will change your perspective on life forever. This isn't about enduring everything or suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding a fundamental truth. Nothing and no one can make you angry unless you allow it. The principles you're about to learn come from ancient Stoic philosophy, tested over thousands of years and proven to work by countless individuals who have achieved true emotional freedom. The reality is that most people live as emotional slaves, constantly reacting to external circumstances and other people's behaviors. They bounce from happiness to anger, from peace to frustration, like a small boat tossed around by the waves. But you don't have to live this way. You can become like a lighthouse, stable, unmovable, and always shining your light, regardless of the storm around you. The first principle to understand is that offenses only have power if you give it to them. When someone insults you, criticizes you, or attempts to humiliate you, most people react with anger, feel hurt, or even seek revenge. But have you stopped to think about why? Why can someone else's words affect you so deeply? The reality is that no one can make you feel offended without your consent. An offense is nothing more than a series of words or actions that only gain meaning if you give it to them. It's like receiving a poisoned gift. If you decide not to accept it, the poison stays with the one who sent it. The ancient Stoics understood this perfectly. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If someone says something hurtful to you, they're not actually harming you. What hurts you is the interpretation you give to those words. Consider this. If a small child insults you, you probably won't care. But if someone close to you does it, suddenly it hurts. Why? Because you believe that person's words have special value. But that's just a perception you can change. This doesn't mean you should become cold or indifferent. It means you should become selective about what deserves your emotional energy. Not every comment, criticism, or negative behavior from others deserves a response from you. Most of the time, people's actions say more about them than about you. When someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself this question: am I going to give this person power over my emotional state? Make a conscious decision that their comment doesn't deserve your energy or your mental peace. True power isn't in responding with anger, it's in remaining firm and unshakable. Anger is a fire that consumes, but you decide whether to feed it or extinguish it. It's an instinctive reaction, a primitive impulse that pushes you to act without thinking. But here lies the difference between a weak mind and a strong mind. The weak mind gets carried away by anger, while the strong mind dominates it. When someone provokes you, when something doesn't go as you expected, stop and ask yourself, who's in charge here, my temperament or my reason? In that moment of pause lies your true power. It's not about suppressing anger, but about transforming it into wisdom and control. The Stoics saw self-mastery as the greatest of all strengths. Seneca said it clearly. The greatest power is mastery over oneself. And this isn't just theory, it's a daily practice. Every time you choose calm over rage, you become stronger. Think about it this way. If someone insults you and you react with anger, you've handed over your power. They've manipulated you with simple words. But if instead you maintain your calm, you demonstrate that you are the one who decides how to feel and act. That's true power. Imagine a warrior on the battlefield. What makes them formidable? Not their uncontrolled fury, but their ability to remain serene and strategic in the midst of chaos. That's how you should be. Make self-mastery your shield. Don't allow others to have control over your emotions. Every time you manage to maintain calm in the face of provocation, you're forging yourself in stoic fire, becoming someone unbreakable. Because the true winner isn't the one who wins an argument, but the one who doesn't allow anything or anyone to make them lose themselves. One of the greatest causes of anger and frustration isn't what others do, but what you expected them to do and they didn't. You become disappointed when someone doesn't respond as you imagined, when they don't show the gratitude you thought you deserved, or when they act in a way you consider unfair. But here's the truth. No one is obligated to fulfill your expectations. Each person sees the world from their own perspective, shaped by their experiences, values, and beliefs. What makes perfect sense to you might be irrelevant to someone else. What you consider respect, another person might see differently. Expecting others to think and act like you is the perfect recipe for frustration. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will encounter ingratitude, disloyalty, arrogance, envy, and lack of reason. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he understood that human nature is imperfect. If you expect less, you suffer less. Accepting people as they are without expecting more than they can give liberates you. It doesn't mean conforming or allowing abuse, but recognizing reality and acting with wisdom. If someone fails you, don't be surprised. If someone is unfair, don't lose your calm. Observe, understand, and adjust your attitude without losing your peace. When you stop demanding that others fit into your vision of the world, you gain something invaluable: emotional freedom. Instead of reacting with anger, you simply accept life as it is and decide to focus on the only thing you can control: your own mind and your own actions. This shift in perspective is liberating because it removes the burden of trying to control what's beyond your influence. Anger is a trap, and falling into it only demonstrates that someone else has power over you. If you react with rage, it means that person managed to manipulate you. But if you maintain calm, if you don't give it importance, then you have absolute control. Imagine someone insults you, criticizes you, or tries to provoke you. What are they looking for? Probably a reaction, an emotional response that makes them feel they've won. But here's the key: don't play their game. Breathe, smile internally, and say to yourself, I won't fall into this trap. The Stoics saw indifference as a powerful weapon. Epictetus said, if someone tries to harm you, remember that harm only occurs if you decide to accept it. If a provocation doesn't affect you, then it was never really a threat. Indifference is your shield. Think of a rock in the middle of a storm. The wind roars, the rain falls hard, but the rock doesn't move, doesn't get altered. That's how you should be. Not because you're insensitive, but because you understand that not everything deserves your energy. Every time someone seeks to bother you, ask yourself, is my peace worth this? Most of the time, the answer is a resounding no. Remember, your calm is a luxury that few can afford. Don't waste your balance on people or situations that don't deserve it. Responding with indifference isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It's demonstrating that no one has power over your emotional state. So the next time someone tries to get you out of your element, simply smile and move forward. Don't react. Don't fall into the game. The victory is yours. Life doesn't attack you, it trains you. Every obstacle, every provocation, every moment of frustration is nothing more than a test of your patience, your self-control, and your wisdom. But most people don't see it that way. They take problems as personal offenses, react with anger, or victimize themselves. The Stoics, on the other hand, see in every challenge an opportunity for growth. When someone insults you, what do? You can react with fury and demonstrate that anyone can get you out of your element, or you can see it as training for your character. It's in difficult moments where you really discover what you're made of, not when everything is easy, but when life tests your temperance. Marcus Aurelius said it with clarity: fire turns into flame what burns in it. What for some is an obstacle, for us is fuel. In other words, difficulties aren't there to destroy you, but to strengthen you. Every time you face a frustrating situation, ask yourself, how would someone with a strong mind react? With anger, with desperation, with complaints? No, they would do it with calm, with strategy, with self-mastery. Imagine you're in a gym and every problem is a weight you must lift. If you avoid the weights, you'll never develop strength. If you avoid challenges, you'll never develop character. So the next time something or someone tries to destabilize you, change your perspective. Don't see it as a personal attack, but as an opportunity to prove to yourself that you're stronger than any provocation. Life doesn't put you through tests to defeat you, but to turn you into someone unbreakable. One of the biggest mistakes we make is emotionally tying ourselves to what others think, say, or do. We believe that others' approval or disapproval defines our worth, that their words have the power to alter us, to make us feel complete or empty. But here's the truth. No one has the power to define who you are more than yourself. Emotional detachment doesn't mean indifference or coldness, but the ability to not let others' actions, words, or opinions affect your inner peace. The Stoics understood that our emotions should be under our control, not under the control of external circumstances. As Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Imagine others' opinions as passing clouds in the sky. They appear suddenly, move across the horizon, and then disappear without a trace. If you cling to each cloud, if you allow yourself to be affected by every comment or judgment, your peace will be a mirage. But if you learn to see those clouds without clinging to them, you'll be able to maintain your calm and emotional stability. Detachment also means letting go of the expectations we have about how others should act. When you don't expect the world to fulfill your desires, you don't suffer when it doesn't. Remember, you don't need others' validation to feel complete. You are enough just as you are. So every time someone criticizes you or circumstances test you, breathe deeply and remember, everything is temporary. Your inner peace is much more valuable than any external opinion. Learn to emotionally detach, and you'll discover a freedom that few experience. It's easy to feel grateful when everything goes well. The sun shines, relationships flow, and things simply work. But the true test of your character comes when things don't go as you expected, when you face uncomfortable, frustrating, or even painful situations. In those moments, developing gratitude is what really strengthens you. Gratitude isn't just thanking for the good, it's also a powerful tool that allows you to see value in adversities. Instead of getting angry or frustrated about what you can't control, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Every challenge, every uncomfortable moment is an opportunity to grow. Every problem contains a lesson that will help you become stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Imagine you're stuck in endless traffic, or a coworker throws an unfair criticism at you. The automatic reaction is anger, stress, or even a feeling of helplessness. But the Stoics teach us that the uncomfortable moment is the perfect opportunity to practice serenity, patience, and self-evaluation. Seneca said it wisely, "Adversity is not the problem. The reaction to adversity is what defines our peace." Instead of losing yourself in frustration, use those moments as practice moments to develop virtues like patience, humility, or temperance. In every uncomfortable situation, ask yourself, how can I come out of this stronger, wiser, and more grateful? As you develop this mindset, you'll realize that you don't control circumstances, but you do control how you choose to face them. Gratitude not only gives you peace, but transforms you into someone who sees every obstacle as an opportunity, every discomfort as a lesson. Often, present problems seem like impossible mountains to climb. Anger and frustration cloud our vision, making what bothers us now feel overwhelming. However, one of the most powerful tools the Stoics left us is the principle of temporal perspective. Imagine you're facing a situation that enrages you, a disagreement with someone, a lost opportunity, or even an unfair criticism. In those moments, it's easy to get trapped in the intensity of the moment and forget that in life's grand scheme, that problem will be just a small spark that will soon extinguish. The next time you face a difficult situation, ask yourself, will this matter in a year, in 5, in 10? Most of the time, the answer will be no. The problems that seem so important to us today are actually temporary and small when we see them from a broader perspective. A disagreement today might seem devastating, but when we look back in a year, we'll barely remember it. This mental exercise has a profound purpose: to free us from the unnecessary weight of immediate worries. It helps us remember that life is full of moments, and most of them don't deserve the energy and emotional attention we give them. What really matters is how we choose to respond to those moments. Time puts into perspective what anguishes us today. Also, this temporal vision teaches us to prioritize what really has value. Daily small annoyances, minor frustrations, can lose all their power when we compare them with life's big questions, our relationships, our health, and our dreams. When you see a problem, stop for a moment and remember, time will reduce the importance of many things that seem so big today. By taking distance, you'll achieve not only greater peace, but also mental and emotional clarity that will allow you to handle the problem with serenity. In a world where speed, noise, and immediacy seem to be the norm, calm has become a powerful act of resistance. In the midst of chaos and confusion, many people mistakenly believe that whoever shouts loudest or responds with anger is the one in control of the situation. But according to Stoic principles, true strength resides in serenity, not in noise. Calm isn't weakness, it's a form of power. When you remain serene, when you don't let yourself be dragged by impulsive emotions or external chaos, you're demonstrating mastery over yourself that few achieve. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that counts." The one who remains calm in the face of the storm has the advantage of clarity, reflection, and the ability to make wise decisions. Instead of reacting instinctively to attacks or problems, calm allows you to act with intention and control. It's easy to fall into the trap of emotional response, to react impulsively, but that's a response that only perpetuates conflict. Calm, on the other hand, allows you to take a step back, evaluate the situation with lucidity, and choose how to act more effectively. Additionally, when you remain calm, others' respect and admiration grow. People who lose control tend to create more chaos, while those who maintain it transmit an energy that invites peace. Remember that your calm is your strength, and in tense moments, the ability to maintain it places you in a position of power that goes beyond impulsive responses. Anger is an automatic reaction, but you don't have to be its slave. Imagine you could face any provocation without losing calm, without anything altering you. This isn't a fantasy, it's a skill you can develop. The key is seeing emotional control as a mental game, a personal challenge that dares you to maintain serenity in the face of adversities. Challenge yourself with the question, how long can I remain immutable in the face of any provocation? Instead of reacting automatically, start seeing every situation that bothers you as an opportunity to practice calm. Every time someone criticizes you, interrupts you, or frustrates you, it's as if life is throwing you an endurance test. Your goal isn't to avoid anger, but to decide not to let yourself be dominated by it. The first step is recognizing that anger is a choice, not a sentence. When someone offends or provokes you, there are really two paths. You can react impulsively, like any person who doesn't have self-control, or you can stop, breathe, and choose not to give in to provocation. Over time, by turning it into a game, your mind will begin to train itself to recognize situations that would usually make you angry, and gradually you'll become stronger and less susceptible to them. This mental challenge gives you power over your emotions. The more you practice, the more you'll notice that what would have deeply altered you before no longer has the same impact. It's not about suppressing anger, but training your mind so anger doesn't control your life. With time, you'll discover that nothing can disturb you because you've made your inner peace your greatest conquest. One of Stoicism's most profound principles is constant awareness that life is ephemeral. Every day that passes is a day that will never return, and every moment we invest in anger or negative thoughts is a moment stolen from our true essence. Imagine for a moment that you could see life as a movie with limited duration. Every second you spend angry or upset is like a lost scene from that movie, a scene you'll never be able to recover. Time, like wind, doesn't stop for anyone. Every minute we spend in fury or frustration is a minute we could have used for something more valuable, enjoying the present, learning, creating memories, or simply being at peace with ourselves. In the midst of frustration or anger, ask yourself, is it really worth spending my time and energy on this? Is it worth losing a piece of my life on something that will ultimately have no significant relevance? When you become aware of how fleeting time is, annoyances and small offenses lose their power. Anger is a response that consumes our energy, our peace, and our capacity to enjoy the present. Life is too short to waste on trivial irritations. Every second is a gift, and it's our responsibility to make the most of it. Remember that in the end, what matters isn't the small discomforts we encounter along the way, but how we choose to live each moment with wisdom and serenity. Practicing this awareness of life's fleeting nature allows us to release tensions and embrace a fuller and more meaningful existence. It's easy to fall into anger's trap when someone provokes or hurts us. The instinctive reaction is usually rage, judgment, criticism. But if we dig a little deeper, we can realize something very important. Most of the time, people who irritate us are dealing with their own internal battles. When someone provokes you, whether through their words, attitudes, or behavior, instead of reacting immediately with anger, try to pause and question, what might this person be suffering to act this way? Behind an aggressive, defensive, or negative attitude, there's often pain, insecurity, fear, or frustration. Seeing the other through compassion's eyes allows you to understand that their behavior has nothing to do with you, but with their own internal struggles. Anger is a reaction that not only distances us from peace, but perpetuates the cycle of suffering. In contrast, compassion connects us with shared humanity. By recognizing that each person is dealing with their own difficulties, you can free yourself from the temptation to react with rage and instead offer a response that comes from a place of understanding and patience. Transforming anger into compassion doesn't mean excusing others' bad behavior, but choosing not to let their difficulties steal your peace. By cultivating this attitude, you not only become a more serene person, but also wiser and more capable of building deeper and more authentic relationships. In the end, it's compassion that allows us to free ourselves from anger and respond with true wisdom. Anger is a mental prison where many live without realizing it, but today you have the key to escape. Now you know that control of your emotions isn't in others' hands, but in yours. The journey to emotional mastery isn't easy, but it's the most rewarding path you can take. Every time you choose calm over chaos, understanding over judgment, compassion over anger, you're not just improving your own life, you're contributing to a more peaceful world. Your emotional stability becomes a lighthouse for others, showing them that it's possible to live differently. The principles you've learned aren't just philosophical concepts, they're practical tools that require daily practice. Like any skill, emotional mastery improves with consistent application. There will be moments when you'll be tested, when old patterns will try to resurface, but remember that each challenge is an opportunity to strengthen your new way of being. The freedom that comes from not being enslaved by your emotions is indescribable. Imagine waking up each day knowing that nothing and no one can steal your peace unless you allow it. This isn't just a dream, it's a reality you can create through conscious choice and consistent practice. Your transformation will inspire others. People will notice the change in you, your calm presence, your wise responses, your ability to remain centered even in difficult situations. You'll become a source of strength and wisdom for those around you. Remember that this journey is ongoing. There's no final destination, only continuous growth and deepening of your understanding. Each day offers new opportunities to practice these principles, to refine your emotional responses, and to move closer to the ideal of the unshakable mind. The ancient Stoics knew that true happiness comes not from external circumstances, but from inner mastery. You now possess the knowledge and tools to achieve this mastery. The only question remaining is, will you choose to use them? Your peace, your joy, and your freedom are in your hands. No one can take them away unless you give them permission. This is the ultimate truth of emotional mastery. You are the architect of your own inner world, and you have the power to build it exactly as you choose. Let's be clear. Your life is full of things that simply don't serve you, that hinder you and steal your energy. But have you ever asked yourself why you continue carrying these things? Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion isn't making noise, but silently eliminating everything that doesn't add value to your existence. Toxic relationships, out. Self-destructive habits, gone too. And no, you don't need to make a spectacle of it or wait for anyone's approval. Today, I'm going to teach you to follow the advice of Stoic philosophy. Let go of what you cannot control and free yourself. Because, friend, life is too short to remain trapped by others' expectations. I'm going to show you step by step how to eliminate 10 things that are undoubtedly turning your life into chaos, not just physical, but mental as well. These things are destroying you before you even realize it, and if you don't act, you might lose something even more important, your peace. That's why you should start today, in silence and without excuses. In the end, what you leave behind says more about you than what you try to hold on to. Are you ready to truly start living? Before we begin, pay attention to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. In a small seaside village lived a young fisherwoman named Helena. She was known for her ability to navigate the most turbulent waters and for her incredible skill at fishing on the most difficult days. However, over the years, Helena had accumulated a large quantity of broken nets and tools that she no longer used, but out of pure habit, she kept them. Every time she went out to sea, the space in her small boat was filled with things that hindered her work. One day, while preparing for a long journey on the ocean, a strong storm formed. The waves pounded her boat, and she realized that the excess of things she carried enormously hindered her ability to maneuver. For hours she fought against the storm, but she felt that it wasn't just the waves that were her enemy, but the unnecessary cargo she carried. On the verge of despair, Helena made a difficult but necessary decision. She began to get rid of what didn't serve her. First, she threw overboard the broken nets, then the old and worn ropes, and finally even some objects she kept out of attachment, but that weren't useful. With each thing she released, her boat became lighter and she could maneuver better through the waves. The waves continued strong, but Helena no longer felt trapped by the weight of the past. Thanks to this attitude, she managed to stay afloat, and finally, when the storm passed, she returned to port. She was exhausted, but safe. When her fellow fishermen saw her return, they asked how she had survived the storm. Helena, with a calm smile, responded, "There are moments in life when we cling to things we don't need, objects, memories, or people that only add weight to our journey. Only when we decide to let go of the unnecessary in silence and without drama do we find the freedom to move forward with greater ease." The moral of this story is that in life there are many things we need to eliminate in silence to move forward. Sometimes the load we carry prevents us from navigating with lightness, and only by releasing that weight do we manage to discover our true path. the fear of others' opinions. Have you ever wondered how many decisions in your life were made out of fear of what others might think? This fear that infiltrates under your skin, that prevents you from being yourself, is like living on a continuous stage under the critical gaze of an audience that in reality isn't even paying attention to you. You know why? Most of the time, people are too busy dealing with their own insecurities to judge you. Even so, you become paralyzed. The fear of others' judgment is like a silent parasite that feeds on your dreams, that sticks to your back and whispers in your ear every time you think of doing something different or daring. What will others think? And suddenly you change direction, adapting your life to what you believe others expect from you. What irony! We spend so much time worried about others' opinions that without realizing it, we stop living the life we really want. This fear pushes us to please people who often aren't even truly part of our lives, as if our compass were misaligned. Instead of following the north of our intuition, we follow the south dictated by society. You wear the mask that best fits the expectations of the moment, at work, with friends, even on social media. But what about the real you? The one hidden under layers of fake smiles and borrowed opinions? Sometimes the fear of what they'll say is even more subtle. It disguises itself as prudence. It's not the right time. Maybe I'm not good enough. Excuses masked as wisdom that deep down hide the same monster, the fear of others' judgment. And meanwhile, dreams remain filed away, waiting for a better moment that never comes. To eliminate this fear once and for all, we need to practice Stoic philosophy. The Stoics teach that we cannot control what others think of us, but we can control how we react to it. It seems simple, but it's not. It requires constant exercise of introspection and courage. It's about learning to live for yourself, to make decisions that make you happy and not just to please others. Life is too short to be lived under the shadow of others' opinions. A good exercise is to start silently eliminating things that don't bring value to your life, those that are only there to please others. Do you feel obligated to maintain a certain image? Did you choose a career that doesn't satisfy you because it seemed like the right choice? Free yourself from these bonds. Start with small decisions. Say no to commitments you don't want to take on. Do something you've always wanted but were afraid to do because of what others might think. Each small action will be a step toward freedom. I won't lie, it's not easy. There will be days when the weight of others' judgment seems crushing. But in those moments, remember, every time you choose to live according to what others think, you lose a piece of what you really are. It's a kind of slow and silent death that you can avoid if you have the courage to be true to yourself. So start eliminating these things in silence. You don't need to announce it to the world. Just set aside what isn't yours, what doesn't belong to your essence. Learn to trust your own judgment and value more what you think of yourself than what others might think. Because at the end of the day, the only person you owe explanations to is yourself. As Carl Jung said, freedom begins the moment you stop worrying about what others think of you. Toxic relationships. There's a phrase I love. There's no worse blind person than the one who doesn't want to see. I'm sure you've heard it, right? Curiously, we often apply this selective blindness to our own relationships. We get used to dealing with people who somehow take more from us than they give. Yes, I'm talking about those toxic relationships that, without you realizing it, slowly drain your energy. And the most curious thing is that you often cling to them as if they were indispensable. I'm not just referring to romantic relationships. Toxic relationships can be anywhere. In the family, in the friend group, at work. And the most interesting thing is that no one forces you to maintain them. But there you are, tolerating in silence as if letting go were an affront to the world. Why do we do this? Perhaps because we were taught that breaking bonds is a sign of weakness or insensitivity, as if eliminating someone from your life were an act of cruelty, when in reality it can be the greatest gesture of self-love you can perform. Let's bring some philosophy into this conversation. The Stoics teach us that we shouldn't worry about what we cannot control. This also applies to the people around us. You cannot control how others act, but you can control whether or not you want to keep them in your life. It's simple, but here's the difficult part: doing it in silence. And don't misunderstand me, it's not about silent revenge or feeling superior. It's simply a conscious decision not to feed a relationship that wears you down anymore. Think about it. You don't need drama to eliminate what doesn't serve you. It's not necessary to announce to the four winds that you're detoxifying from people. Just let go. It's like stopping watering a plant that no longer blooms. You do it calmly, knowing it's no longer part of your garden, and that's okay. The plant follows its path, you follow yours, and life continues. Has it ever happened that you spend time with someone, even someone close, and leave that interaction completely exhausted? It's not that this person is bad, but their energy doesn't match yours. That's where the key comes in. Detecting these relationships. Listen to your body, your mind. If you feel that each interaction with a certain person is a true emotional marathon, you might be in a toxic relationship. It can be painful to admit, but it's necessary. Here's where the silence strategy comes in. Gradually reduce interactions. Stop seeking contact. Distance yourself. Big gestures or fights aren't necessary. Just stop being available. It's liberating, believe me. Not because you're turning your back on the world, but because you're prioritizing your well-being. Sometimes self-love isn't saying no out loud, but saying enough in silence. So how do you identify these relationships? It's simple. If every time you see a message from this person, you feel a knot in your stomach, if going out with them leaves you more exhausted than a whole week of work, if you notice that it's always you who gives and never receives, you already have your answer. When this becomes clear, start the elimination process. No drama, no unnecessary explanations, just move forward. The conclusion is that it's not about being cruel or holding grudges. It's about respecting yourself enough not to allow them to continue draining the energy you could use with people and activities that truly nourish you. In the end, the key is being honest with yourself and putting your well-being above guilt or fear of hurting others. Keep this clear, my friend. Some people are like the wind. You feel them, but you can't hold on to them. You just need to let them pass. Self-destructive habits. Sometimes you catch yourself doing small things that, if you look closely, you know aren't taking you anywhere. They're those actions that seem harmless at first, but that, without realizing it, slowly wear down your mental or physical peace. I too have fallen into this trap more times than I'd like to admit. Small, self-destructive habits that go unnoticed, like a constant dripping that over time wears away even the rock. But what happens if those habits are the rocks of our daily life? How do we eliminate them without making a scene? First, we need to recognize them, and that's the trick. It's not easy. Pointing out what bothers us in others is one thing, but identifying it in ourselves is different. You wake up in the morning and without thinking, you grab your phone, not for something important, of course, but out of pure habit, as if your finger were programmed to swipe the screen before your brain has even awakened. It seems harmless, right? Until you realize you've lost 20 minutes of your morning immersed in nothing, with your mind already saturated before you even get out of bed. This is just one example. We do this with so many other things. That extra coffee that wasn't necessary, that conversation you knew you shouldn't have had, that series that doesn't add anything to you, but that you continue watching out of inertia. They're the small things that over time can create a big hole in your well-being. Now, eliminating these habits is another story. Let's be honest. How many times have you promised to leave something behind and ended up doing it even more? Like when you say, "Starting tomorrow, I'll really begin." And then tomorrow comes, and it's just another day of excuses. That's where a lesson from the Stoics comes in. These philosophers of ancient Rome believed that great transformations don't happen all at once, but in small, silent, almost imperceptible steps. You don't need to shout to the world that you're going to change or make a grand gesture. Just start observing. The key is in awareness. When you notice your hand is going to grab your phone for no reason, stop. You don't need to throw your phone out the window, although that might be cathartic. Just set it aside and do something else, something as simple as taking a deep breath and stretching. When you feel the urge to have that third cup of coffee, ask yourself, do I really need this, or is it just habit? If it's just inertia, leave the cup. Sometimes it's as simple as that, stopping at the right moment without drama, without needing monumental changes. Eliminating self-destructive habits doesn't mean you're going to become a perfect person overnight. We all have our small internal battles, and that's okay. The point is to approach them with a simple strategy: silence and consistency, like a drop that instead of wearing away, slowly polishes. And if someday you feel you're not progressing, remember this: what today seems like a small effort, over time transforms into a great victory. You might not notice the results immediately, but it's like planting a seed. One day, without making a fuss, it grows and becomes a tree. The same happens with these small adjustments. So, the next time you identify a habit that hurts you more than it helps, eliminate it in silence. You don't need to announce it or make a big show. Just let it go, step by step, drop by drop. As Epictetus said, true change doesn't make noise, it simply happens. The desire to control everything. Have you ever felt that if you don't have absolute control over everything around you, the world will collapse? Don't worry, I understand. We like to believe that if we organize every detail to the millimeter and prevent all unforeseen events, life will be like a perfectly adjusted machine where nothing can go wrong. What an absurd idea, isn't it? But even so, we find ourselves trapped in this mental game, convinced that we can master everything that happens to us. It's a trap, a mirage, and the worst part is that the more we try to cling to control, the more we feel we're losing our balance. So I ask you, how about letting go of this obsessive need for control? You know, this mania of wanting everything to be exactly as we imagine. The desire to control everything is nothing more than a mental prison, one we build brick by brick each time we believe that with enough effort, things will turn out exactly as planned. But you know what happens? The universe doesn't work that way. Stoic philosophy, with its millennial wisdom that remains so current, teaches us that the key isn't in controlling what we cannot, but in releasing the unnecessary and focusing on what really depends on us. Think about it. We try to control the weather, others' opinions, people's reactions, the results of our efforts, everything that actually isn't in our hands. It's like trying to hold the tide with your hands, a complete waste of energy. Yet we do this constantly, and worse. Every time something doesn't go as we expected, we get frustrated, irritated, as if it were a cosmic injustice. What irony, isn't it? Imagine you're carrying a backpack. Every time you try to control something outside your reach, you put a stone inside it. At first, you might not even feel the weight, but over time, the backpack becomes unbearably heavy. In the end, that load crushes you. Wouldn't it be better to get rid of those stones? Open space for what really matters, for what you can actually control. Your emotions, your actions, your choices. Release the rest. For a long time, I myself worried obsessively about predicting everything that could go wrong in my life. If I had a meeting, I'd plan every possible uncomfortable question. If I scheduled an outing with friends, I'd worry about the place, the weather, anything that could deviate from the plan. It was exhausting. And you know what happened? Most of the things I worried about never happened. In the end, I realized this attempt to predict everything didn't give me more control. It just gave me more anxiety. So I started letting go, little by little. I learned to trust the process more. And what happened? Things continued to happen. Some good, others not so much. But I felt lighter because I had stopped carrying what wasn't my responsibility. Trusting life doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible. It's about accepting with maturity that there are things outside our hands, and that's okay. Silently eliminate this need to control everything. Make space for the unexpected, for surprises, for what's beyond your reach. This doesn't mean you should simply settle and watch life pass by. It's about releasing the weight and accepting that there's a part of the path that doesn't depend on you. And you know what else? That's liberating. Remember, sometimes letting go is the most powerful way to take control. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, true control lies in the ability to release the uncontrollable. Unrealistic expectations. I don't know about you, but I spent a good part of my life believing I needed to be perfect. Nobody told me this directly, but it was in the air, hovering between well-intentioned comments, approving looks, and that constant silent comparison with others. I grew up with the firm conviction that meeting others' expectations, and worse still my own, was synonymous with success. What a big lie! If you stop to think about it, trying to fulfill unrealistic expectations is like trying to fill a bottomless well with a leaky bucket. You never finish, you're always exhausted, and in the end, all that remains is a sad puddle of frustration at your feet. The most curious thing is that many of these expectations aren't even ours. They were built by others, family, friends, society, and we accepted them because in our quest to be better, we decided we needed to fulfill them. Do a quick exercise. How many times have you felt disappointed for not achieving something you didn't actually want? Exactly. We impose goals so high on ourselves that if we fail, we feel useless. If I'm not the best at my job, the perfect partner, the ideal friend, the exemplary child, what's left of me? In the end, these expectations end up weighing more than our own actions. It's like running a marathon with a backpack full of stones. You advance slower, get tired sooner, and even if you reach the end, you feel like you did it dragging your feet. What's the point? This is where Stoic philosophy comes in with a brilliant insight. According to the Stoics, you cannot control what others think of you or guarantee that the universe will act in your favor. What you can control is how you react to it. The key, then, is to reduce the load. Lower those expectations that suffocate you. If you expect less from yourself and others, it doesn't mean you're conforming. It means you're liberating yourself. You're no longer trapped by the constant pressure to correspond to the impossible. You're simply existing and moving forward. Of course, this magic doesn't happen overnight. I'm not saying to throw all your expectations out the window at once. Think of it like cleaning a closet full of old clothes. First, look at what no longer fits you, what you never really liked, and gradually get rid of one piece at a time. Sometimes you hesitate to let go of a t-shirt because you think you'll use it someday, but deep down you know you won't. With expectations, it's the same. Start by eliminating those that don't belong to you, then review your own and ask yourself, are they realistic? You don't need to keep all of them. Something that can help reduce expectations without creating drama is changing how you talk to yourself. For example, instead of saying, I need to do everything perfectly, try, I'll do the best I can with what I have now. It seems simple, but it's liberating. You open space for error, which is human, and for the possibility of improving without constant pressure. Another infallible trick: avoid telling everyone your plans. The less noise you make, the fewer expectations others create about what you should achieve. After all, external expectations are just that, noise. Silently eliminate what doesn't add to you. You'll notice things start to flow much more naturally. Releasing expectations isn't giving up, it's an act of wisdom. Instead of focusing on what you should do or be, concentrate on what you really want and what's under your control. Fewer expectations, more freedom. Engrave this in your mind, my friend. The less you expect, the lighter you become. The need to always be right. Have you noticed you have an almost obsessive need to always be correct, to be the person who knows everything? It's as if every conversation were a battlefield, and victory meant proving you're right, a silent but relentless struggle. The worst part is that this war isn't with others, but with yourself. Every time you insist on having the last word, it's as if you need to convince yourself that your worth depends on it. Isn't it exhausting? Because honestly, I'm already exhausted from this endless race. We were taught to believe we must always have the right answer, as if being wrong were synonymous with weakness. Society, social media, and even family gatherings reinforce the idea that failing is failure. But I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes being right is the least important thing in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us to accept what we cannot control, and you know what? You cannot control others' perception of you. This endless struggle to prove you know everything leads nowhere. It just makes you more anxious, more frustrated, and at the end of the day, lonelier. Ask yourself, what do I gain by always being right? An invisible medal? It doesn't seem worth the effort, does it? It's like carrying a suitcase full of unnecessary stones. With each discussion or imposed opinion, you put another stone in there until the weight becomes unbearable and you wonder why you're so exhausted. The answer is simple. You're wearing yourself out over something that has no real value. The next time you feel that urgency to demonstrate you're right, try staying silent, not out of resignation, but out of liberation. It's like releasing a pen you've been holding for hours without realizing it. When you let go, you feel a relief you didn't know you needed. The same thing happens with the need to always be right. When you release that load, you realize you were trapped in a war you didn't even want to fight. So how do you release this need? Accept that you don't need to know everything. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay not to have a formed opinion about everything. You're not competing in a wisdom contest. Learn to truly listen, not to refute, but to understand. There's a huge difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a biological function. Listening is an art. When you listen attentively, The anxiety to correct or impose your point of view disappears. Appreciate silence. Sometimes the best argument is simply allowing others to have the last word. Not every conversation needs a winner, because in the end, winning a discussion isn't the same as having peace. Is it worth always being right at the cost of your tranquility? Not really. The next time you're in a conversation and feel that urgency to correct or impose your opinion, take a deep breath, release the pen, let it go. The peace you'll feel will be infinitely more valuable than any momentary victory. If it's any consolation, remember the Stoics. They knew that true wisdom isn't in being right, but in knowing when to let go. As Seneca said, true knowledge isn't in winning all battles, but in knowing when not to fight. Digital noise. Have you noticed how you're surrounded by digital noise? I'm not just talking about cars on the street or the neighbor drilling the wall, but that other noise, the one in your pocket, in your hands, in your eyes. Social media, endless notifications, messages that don't stop coming. It seems like everything is designed to distract you, to keep you in a constant state of alert. And there you are, thinking you have control, when in reality, it's the digital chaos that controls you. The reality is that we live in an era where silence is a luxury, but this luxury isn't as unattainable as it seems. The first step is understanding what's really stealing your attention, because in fact, there are things you should silently eliminate from your life. And yes, it's possible. It's just not so obvious. I'll be honest. Digital chaos doesn't disappear just because you close an app. That would be like trying to put out a fire with a glass of water. What you need is to be radical, like the Stoics who knew that inner peace was what really mattered, and they didn't achieve it by getting carried away by external distractions. So what should you silently eliminate from your life? Let's go. First, social media. Yes, I know it seems cliché, but believe me, the more accounts you follow, the more noise you create. I'm not saying to disconnect completely, but think, do you really need to know what your friend's cousin's friend's sister is doing? Eliminate mercilessly everything that doesn't add to you, and if you can, do a digital cleanup from time to time, like organizing a closet. Take out what no longer serves, what should never have been there in the first place. Second, notifications. Here's where it gets interesting. Why do you allow your phone to interrupt you every 2 minutes? Every time it vibrates or makes a sound, your brain jumps. This doesn't just steal your time, but also your mental energy. Deactivate all non-essential notifications. At first, you might feel some anxiety, as if you're missing something, but later, when you realize how good it is to have control over when and how you check your phone, you'll thank me. Third, the fear of missing out. Ah, the great modern villain. We live with the feeling that if we're not connected, we'll miss something important. But here's an uncomfortable truth. What really matters isn't on the screen. It's around you, in the people, in the moments that pass unnoticed while you're stuck on the latest viral meme. Eliminate this fear. Release the need to be in everything, because the more you try to embrace the digital world, the more you lose what's really worth it. Once you get rid of this unnecessary noise, something magical happens. You start to hear what really matters. Digital silence is the first step to reconnecting with yourself, with your ideas, with your true priorities. This is where Stoic philosophy comes into play. You cannot control what happens outside you, but you can decide how you react to it. When you eliminate digital noise, everything else becomes clearer. My advice is this: choose silence not as an absence of noise, but as a conscious presence of what you really want in your life. Because in the end, that's the true luxury of our era. As Gandhi said, Peace doesn't come when noise goes out, but when you decide to listen to yourself. Negative thoughts. Have you stopped to notice how negative thoughts enter your mind almost without making noise? Like someone who doesn't want anything. They appear, and suddenly they're in command of everything. They're like those neighbors who arrive without warning, and worse, don't leave. The most frustrating thing is that you often hand over the key to them, not because you want to, but because they've convinced you their presence is inevitable, a part of your daily life. But what if I told you that you can change the lock? Let's speak clearly. These thoughts are nothing more than destructive patterns that end up shaping your actions, and certainly not in the best way. You've surely caught yourself thinking things like, "Why does everything go wrong for me?" or "I'll never succeed." And of course, when these thoughts repeat themselves over and over, you end up believing them. And what you believe, you end up acting on. It's like planting a poisoned tree and then wondering why the fruits aren't edible. The curious thing is that these negative thoughts don't necessarily reflect reality, but they feel as real as the ground you walk on. This is where Stoic philosophy enters with its brutal simplicity. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. It seems so simple, but in practice, it's something that frequently escapes us. We allow these mental patterns to dictate our emotions and actions, when true freedom lies in taking the reins of our responses. And where do we start? The first key is silence. Yes, you read correctly. Silently eliminating these negative thoughts. You don't need to make a spectacle trying to push them away. Just start recognizing when they appear, identify them, and don't feed them. The more attention you give them, the more power they have. Think of it like a fly in the room. If you obsess over catching it, you'll only agitate it more. How about ignoring it until it gets tired of flying? Second, question your thoughts. When a destructive thought arises, ask yourself, is this true? Is everything really going wrong, or is it just an exaggerated perception? Often you'll realize they're inflated ideas with no real basis, and if there's some truth to them, you can start thinking about solutions instead of staying trapped in the problem. Third, detachment. I'm not saying you should become a monk on top of a mountain, but start taking emotional distance from your thoughts. They aren't you. Just because something passes through your head doesn't mean it needs to stay there. This requires practice, but little by little you'll learn to see them for what they really are, clouds in a sky that remains firm. Negative thoughts are one of those small things you should silently eliminate from your life. They don't need fanfare, just careful focus, patience, and internal questioning. Because at the end of the day, what you think shapes what you do, and what you do defines who you are. As Brian Tracy said well, thoughts aren't facts, but if you believe in them, they become your reality. Physical and mental disorder. Sometimes it happens that we wake up and feel the world is a little heavier than normal. You look around and realize it's not just your feeling. Your space is loaded with things, objects, piles of papers, clothes thrown on the chair, and somehow your head also seems like a disorganized drawer. I don't know if this happens to you, but when my surroundings are a mess, I feel like my mind follows the same path. Physical and mental disorder, although it might not seem so, are more connected than we'd like to admit. There's something deeply exhausting about the disorder around us. Our disorganized space directly affects our mental clarity. The Stoics, for example, spoke about the importance of focusing on the essential, of eliminating the superfluous. And if you think about it, disorder is exactly the opposite of that. It's everything unnecessary that distracts us and takes us out of our element. The accumulation of things doesn't just occupy physical space, but also consumes energy. Each object out of place, each paper that should have been thrown away months ago, each thing that blocks your path, all of this isn't just accumulated material, it's noise. A noise that fills the mind with small pending tasks and worries you didn't even know you had. You know that feeling of wanting to organize something but not even knowing where to start? That's the secret. It's not about organizing everything at once, but silently eliminating what no longer serves. The first step is simple. Observe. Look around and ask yourself, do I really need all of this? If you haven't used something for a long time, you probably don't need it anymore. But it's not just about material things. Mental disorder works the same way. Sometimes we accumulate thoughts, worries, and feelings like someone keeping broken objects, thinking they'll be useful someday. The truth is that keeping all this only weighs us down. So what to do? Silently eliminate, little by little. You don't need to make a big spectacle of it or announce it to the world. Just let go of what no longer serves, both physically and mentally. Sometimes silence is an act of rebellion in a world full of noise. If there are people in your life who cause you discomfort, projects that no longer motivate you, thoughts that only drain you, get rid of them. No drama, no explanations, no more turns than necessary. Just let them go. The exterior reflects the interior. Remember that often external order reflects internal order. If you start bringing a little clarity to your surroundings, you'll see that little by little, this clarity will also reach your mind. It's not magic, it's a process. It's like when you decide to clean a drawer and suddenly feel lighter, because in the end, each thing in its place is one less worry. Each object you release is a step toward a lighter and clearer life. The Stoics didn't complicate their lives with the unnecessary. They knew the key was to focus on what really mattered and let the rest pass. As simple as that. Living in a world full of physical and mental disorder is like walking in a maze with no exit. But when you start getting rid of what you don't need, you discover that the exit was always there. You just couldn't see it because of the excess. If you want mental peace, start organizing what's around you. Do it without haste, without noise, but consistently. Your mind will thank you. As Nelson Mandela said, when noise is silenced, the essential becomes clearer. Unnecessary comparisons. Sometimes I wonder why you have this habit of comparing yourself to others. Come on, don't give me excuses. We all do it. But tell me, do you really think this serves any purpose? It's like running in a competition where the others don't even know they're participating, and worse, they probably don't even care. Meanwhile, there you are in your head, measuring every step, every stumble, every small advance, but not your own, but others. Comparing yourself is like trying to win a singing contest using someone else's voice. It makes no sense. You have your own melody, your own rhythm, but you insist on following someone else's sheet music. The problem is that this apparently harmless habit gradually undermines your self-esteem. You wake up one day feeling you're not good enough, not fast enough, not enough at something, all because you're too busy looking sideways instead of focusing on what's in front of you. The truth is that life isn't a speed race. It's more like crossing by boat. You choose the direction, the stops, and the rhythm. But if you're too concentrated on the boats passing by you, all you manage is to steer your own rudder off course. The most curious thing is that while you're watching someone else's boat, they're probably doing the same with you. That's how this absurd comparison works. Everyone looks at others, but nobody enjoys their own journey. Stop comparing yourself and do it in silence. Eliminate this practice as one of the things you remove from life without making a fuss. It's like getting rid of an old t-shirt you don't wear anymore. Nobody needs to know, but you'll feel the difference. Comparing yourself to others isn't just useless, it's a betrayal against yourself. It's like telling your inner self that it's not enough, that you need to be someone else to be worth something. But think about it. This philosophy doesn't make sense. The Stoics already said the only valid comparison is with who you were yesterday. So, what to do when comparison begins? Don't try to silence the voice, question it. When you notice that internal voice starting to compare, listen to what it says, but question its logic. Why are you comparing yourself to this person? What exactly makes you feel inferior? Remember what you've already achieved. Take a pause and reflect on your own progress and conquests. Often we forget how far we've already walked when we're constantly looking at others. Another strategy that works is practicing gratitude. Yes, I know it seems like beaten advice, but I guarantee it's powerful. Be grateful for what you have, for what you've conquered, for what you are. When you focus on what you have instead of what's missing or what others possess, something changes. Suddenly, the weight of comparison begins to disappear, and you realize that the only path that matters is your own. Life is too short to waste time competing in an imaginary race with others. Comparing yourself only distracts you from what really matters, living your life at your own pace, with your own rules. And when you start doing this, you realize how liberating it is. My friend, I'll leave you with a reflection that helped me a lot in the most difficult moments. When you stop seeing yourself through others' eyes, you discover who you really are. The constant comparison with others is like living in a house of mirrors where every reflection shows you a distorted version of yourself. But the moment you step outside and look in a clear mirror, you finally see your true image, unique, valuable, and complete just as you are. Think about how much energy you've wasted trying to measure up to standards that weren't even yours to begin with. How many decisions have you made based on what others might think or achieve? How many dreams have you postponed because someone else seemed to be further ahead? This mental exercise of constant comparison is like running on a treadmill. You expend enormous energy, but never actually move forward. The most ironic part is that the people you compare yourself to are probably too busy with their own insecurities to judge you. We create these elaborate competitions in our minds where we're the only participants. Meanwhile, the supposed competitors are living their lives, making their own mistakes, celebrating their own victories, completely unaware they're part of your internal tournament. When you eliminate this habit of comparison, something remarkable happens. You start to appreciate your own journey. You begin to see your unique path with its specific challenges and particular victories. You realize that your struggles are preparing you for your destiny, not someone else's. Your timeline is different because your purpose is different. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, despite being one of the most powerful men in the world, constantly reminded himself that true wealth wasn't in comparing his empire to others, but in appreciating what he could control and influence. He wrote extensively about focusing on his own character development rather than measuring himself against other emperors or philosophers. This principle of eliminating comparison extends beyond just personal achievements. It applies to relationships, career paths, financial situations, and even happiness levels. When you see a couple that seems perfect on social media, remember you're comparing their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. When you see someone's career success, you don't see the years of struggle, rejection, and sacrifice that preceded it. The practice of releasing comparison is like decluttering your mental space. Every time you catch yourself in the comparison trap, gently redirect your attention to your own progress. Ask yourself, what did I learn today? How did I grow? What am I grateful for in my own experience? These questions anchor you back to your reality, your growth, your journey. Remember that your value isn't determined by how you stack up against others, but by how authentic you are to yourself. The most successful people in history weren't successful because they were better than everyone else. They were successful because they were uniquely themselves. They stopped trying to be second-rate versions of others and became first-rate versions of themselves. As you continue on this path of silent elimination, you'll discover that letting go of these 10 things isn't just about removing negative elements from your life. It's about making space for what truly matters. When you stop fearing others' opinions, you make room for authentic self-expression. When you release toxic relationships, you create space for meaningful connections. When you abandon self-destructive habits, you open pathways to healthy growth. This process isn't always comfortable. There will be moments when the familiar weight of these old patterns feels safer than the uncertainty of change. There will be times when you'll want to return to the known chaos rather than embrace the unknown peace. This is normal and expected. Change, even positive change, requires courage. The beauty of doing this work in silence is that it doesn't require external validation or approval. You don't need permission from others to improve your life. You don't need to explain your choices or justify your decisions to become who you're meant to be. This silent revolution is entirely yours to orchestrate. Think of yourself as a sculptor working with marble. Every unnecessary thing you eliminate is like removing excess stone to reveal the masterpiece within. The statue was always there. It just needed to be uncovered. Similarly, your best self is already within you. It just needs to be freed from everything that's covering it up. The ancient Stoics knew that true freedom comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting nothing that you don't need. When you eliminate what doesn't serve you, you discover what does. When you stop carrying what weighs you down, you realize how light you can be. When you cease trying to control everything, you find your true power. This journey of elimination and liberation is ongoing. It's not a destination you reach once and stay forever. It's a continuous practice of choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Every day presents new opportunities to apply these principles, to strengthen your resolve, and to deepen your commitment to living authentically. As you move forward, remember that every small act of letting go is an act of courage. Every moment you choose peace over chaos, authenticity over approval, and self-respect over self-destruction, you're voting for the person you want to become. These votes accumulate over time, creating the life you truly want to live. The path ahead isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's not about never struggling. It's about struggling with purpose. It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. And most importantly, it's not about being like everyone else. It's about being true to who you are. Your life is a canvas, and you are the artist. Every day, you choose which colors to use, which strokes to make, and which elements to include or exclude. The masterpiece you're creating is uniquely yours, and it doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be beautiful and meaningful. So continue this work of silent elimination with patience and compassion for yourself. Trust the process, even when progress seems slow. Celebrate small victories, learn from setbacks, and keep moving forward. The person you're becoming through this process is worth every effort you're making. In the end, The things you choose to eliminate from your life are just as important as the things you choose to keep. By saying no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to what does. By letting go of what weighs you down, you're making room for what lifts you up. This is the silent revolution that transforms not just your circumstances, but your very essence. The journey continues, and you have everything you need within you to succeed. Trust yourself, trust the process, and trust that on the other side of this elimination lies a life of greater freedom, authenticity, and peace than you ever imagined possible. Imagine mastering the art of controlling your mind, a quest that traces back to Stoic philosophy, a stream of thought that flourished in ancient Greece and Rome. This ancient philosophy maintains that by conquering our thoughts, emotions, and reactions, we can discover a deep wellspring of serenity and virtue independent of life's external circumstances. This profound understanding offers us the tools to achieve internal mastery, allowing us to lead a more balanced and meaningful existence. By understanding and applying these principles, it's possible to reach a state of serenity that enables us to face life's ups and downs with grace and wisdom. The Stoics weren't merely theoretical philosophers sitting in ivory towers. They were practical thinkers who lived through wars, political upheavals, and personal tragedies, yet maintained their composure and moral compass through it all. Their teachings have survived over 2 millennia because they work, not just in theory, but in the messy, complicated reality of human existence. The foundation of Stoic philosophy rests on a simple yet revolutionary idea. While we cannot control what happens to us, we can absolutely control how we respond to what happens to us. This shift in perspective from external focus to internal mastery is perhaps the most liberating realization a human being can have. It means that regardless of your circumstances, whether you're facing financial hardship, relationship troubles, health challenges, or any other difficulty, you retain the power to choose your response, and in that choice lies your freedom. The pursuit of inner tranquility represents one of the central pillars of Stoic philosophy, emphasizing independence from external circumstances. The Stoics believed that true happiness and tranquility should not depend on external circumstances. Instead, they sought to find inner peace regardless of the fluctuations of the external world. This means that no matter what happens around us, we can maintain our composure and virtue. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or indifferent to the world. Rather, it's about developing an unshakable core that remains stable even when everything around us is in chaos. The acceptance of impermanence forms a crucial element of this pursuit. The quest for tranquility requires accepting impermanence. Stoics understand that everything in life is transitory, and clinging to ephemeral things or situations will inevitably lead to suffering. By embracing impermanence, they find a peace that isn't shaken by changes. This acceptance doesn't mean we become passive or stop caring about outcomes. It means we hold our expectations lightly and remain adaptable when circumstances shift. Consider how often we suffer not because of what's actually happening, but because things aren't going according to our plans or expectations. We suffer when the promotion doesn't come through, when the relationship ends, when the investment loses value, or when our health takes an unexpected turn. But what if we could maintain our inner equilibrium regardless of these external changes? What if we could find a deeper source of contentment that doesn't depend on everything going our way? Equanimity in the face of adversity represents one of the most remarkable aspects of this pursuit of tranquility. Stoics view difficulties as opportunities to grow, develop resilience, and strengthen the mind. Rather than seeing challenges as unfair punishments or reasons to despair, they see them as training exercises for the soul. This perspective transforms our relationship with adversity from one of victimhood to one of empowerment. The detachment from disturbing emotions plays a vital role in achieving inner tranquility. Inner tranquility is achieved through detachment from disturbing emotions such as anger, fear, and despair. Stoics teach us to recognize these emotions, but not allow them to govern our actions or decisions. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means developing the skill to observe them without being overwhelmed by them. Living in accordance with virtue serves as the true source of tranquility for Stoics. When we act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, our conscience is clear, and we aren't tormented by feelings of guilt, remorse, or regret. This alignment between our actions and our values creates a deep sense of integrity and peace that external circumstances cannot touch. The concept of contentment with sufficiency challenges our modern consumer culture. Stoics promote the idea that the relentless pursuit of more wealth, power, or pleasure often leads to dissatisfaction. Instead, they emphasize the importance of finding contentment with sufficiency, avoiding excessive desires and material attachments. This doesn't mean living in poverty or denying ourselves reasonable comforts. It means not making our happiness dependent on acquiring more and more external things. Serenity, as an ideal to pursue throughout life, represents a lifelong journey rather than a destination. Inner tranquility is seen as an ideal that should be pursued throughout life. It's not achieved all at once, but is gradually cultivated through self-control, self-discipline, and constant practice of Stoic principles. This perspective removes the pressure to achieve perfect serenity immediately, and instead encourages consistent, patient effort over time. The pursuit of inner freedom intertwines closely with the quest for tranquility. When we're not enslaved by our own emotions, desires, and external circumstances, we achieve a freedom that allows us to live according to our values and principles. This inner freedom is perhaps the most valuable possession we can develop, as it cannot be taken away by external forces. Understanding what we cannot control forms another fundamental pillar of Stoic thought. The Stoics emphasize that many events and circumstances in life are beyond our direct control. This includes other people's actions, natural events, the past, and even the future. The key to Stoic serenity is fully embracing this reality and directing our efforts toward what we can control, primarily our own mind and actions. Creating a clear distinction between the realm of control and the external realm helps us avoid useless frustrations. By recognizing that we cannot change certain things, such as other people's behavior or past events, we free ourselves from the exhausting struggle against immutable realities. This doesn't mean we become passive. It means we channel our energy more effectively toward areas where we can actually make a difference. The detachment from unrealistic expectations often causes suffering due to unrealistic expectations. Stoics advise us to let go of excessive expectations and accept reality as it is. This doesn't mean we should be indifferent, but rather that we should keep our expectations aligned with what is possible and reasonable. When we expect less from external circumstances and focus more on what we can control, we set ourselves up for greater peace and fewer disappointments. The serene confrontation of adversity emerges when we accept that adversity is part of life. Stoics develop resilience and courage to face challenges with serenity. Instead of rebelling against difficulties, we can see them as opportunities to grow and learn. This shift in perspective transforms obstacles from sources of frustration into opportunities for development. Focusing on reaction rather than action represents a crucial distinction in Stoic thought. Although we cannot control external events, we can control how we react to them. Stoics emphasize that our ability to choose our responses is one of life's greatest gifts. Therefore, we should concentrate our efforts on cultivating virtuous responses such as patience, compassion, and wisdom. The detachment from past and future concerns helps us live more fully in the present. Constantly worrying about the past and future can prevent us from living fully in the present. Stoics remind us that the past cannot be changed and the future is uncertain. Therefore, it's wise to focus our attention on the here and now, where we can actually make a difference. The practice of virtue as the supreme good identifies 4 cardinal virtues that serve as pillars for virtuous living. These virtues are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Each plays an important role in the pursuit of wisdom and the development of character. These aren't abstract concepts, but practical guidelines for daily decision-making. Wisdom involves the pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the nature of the world and human nature. This implies seeking truth, self-awareness, and the ability to discern what is truly valuable in life. Wisdom isn't just about accumulating information, it's about developing practical understanding that guides us toward better choices and deeper insights into the nature of reality. Courage represents the virtue that allows us to face fear and act justly even in the midst of danger or adversity. Stoics believed that courage was intrinsically linked to wisdom, as it requires discernment to face appropriate dangers. This isn't reckless bravery, but thoughtful courage that stands up for what's right even when it's difficult or costly. Justice involves acting with impartiality, fairness, and respect for others' rights. Stoics believed that justice was an essential part of virtuous life and social harmony. This extends beyond legal justice to encompass fairness in all our dealings with others and recognition of our interconnectedness as human beings. Temperance represents control over desires and appetites, avoiding excess and unbridled pleasures. It also includes mastery over emotions and the ability to maintain serenity in all circumstances. This virtue helps us avoid the extremes that lead to suffering and maintains our equilibrium in the face of both pleasure and pain. The continuous practice of virtue represents an ongoing and challenging journey. Stoics believed that no one is completely virtuous, but everyone can work to improve these virtues throughout life. This perspective removes the burden of perfectionism while encouraging consistent effort toward moral development. Virtue as the source of happiness forms a core Stoic teaching. They taught that true happiness resides in the practice of virtue. By living according to these principles, we can find a deep sense of fulfillment and meaning regardless of external circumstances. This happiness isn't dependent on external validation or material success, but emerges from the alignment of our actions with our highest values. The virtue as a source of self-sufficiency leads to emotional and spiritual self-sufficiency. This means we don't depend on external things like wealth, status, or approval to find joy and satisfaction. This self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation or selfishness. It means having a stable internal foundation that doesn't require constant external reinforcement. Self-control and self-transformation represent essential aspects of virtue pursuit. The quest for virtue requires self-control and self-transformation. It involves recognizing our imperfections, learning from our mistakes, and constantly working to become better human beings. This process requires honesty about our shortcomings and commitment to gradual improvement. The practice of virtue as a path to meaningful life represents the Stoic view of virtue as the path toward a meaningful and ethical life. It empowers us to make just decisions, live in harmony with others, and contribute to the common good. This creates a sense of purpose that transcends personal gratification and connects us to something larger than ourselves. Emotional control represents a fundamental aspect of achieving serenity and virtue according to Stoic teachings. Mastering emotions is essential for reaching serenity and virtue. Stoics recognize that emotions can be powerful and often lead us to act impulsively or irrationally. Therefore, they emphasize the importance of controlling emotions in specific ways. Emotional self-awareness serves as the first step in emotional mastery. The first step is cultivating emotional self-awareness, which involves the ability to identify and understand our emotions as they arise. This includes recognizing when we're experiencing emotions such as anger, fear, sadness, or euphoria. This awareness creates space between the stimulus and our response, allowing for more thoughtful reactions. Emotional distance follows recognition of an emotion. After recognizing an emotion, Stoics recommend creating some emotional distance. Instead of being completely carried away by an emotion, they suggest taking a step back and examining the situation more objectively. This pause allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Reasoning about emotions reflects the Stoic belief that reason should prevail over emotion. This means using the power of rational thought to evaluate the validity and usefulness of a specific emotion in a given situation. For example, if we're feeling anger, we should question whether the anger is justified and whether acting on it is appropriate. Choosing virtuous responses requires that once we've evaluated an emotion, we must choose a response that aligns with virtuous principles. For example, instead of reacting impulsively with anger, we can choose to respond with calm and understanding. This requires self-control and constant practice. Transforming negative emotions into constructive actions represents another Stoic teaching. They teach the transformation of negative emotions into constructive actions. For example, instead of allowing fear to paralyze us, we can use it as motivation to take sensible precautions. This transforms potentially destructive emotions into forces for positive action. Emotional equanimity serves as the ultimate goal, reaching a state where emotions don't dominate us. This doesn't mean eliminating emotions, but controlling them in a way that doesn't negatively influence our judgment and actions. This state allows us to maintain our values and principles even when experiencing strong emotions. The acceptance of natural emotions deserves emphasis. It's worth noting that Stoics don't advocate for complete suppression of emotions, but for their wise and virtuous management. They recognize that natural emotions such as grief over a loss or joy over success are part of the human condition. The goal is not to become emotionally dead, but to avoid being enslaved by our emotions. Living in the present moment represents an essential principle for mastering the mind and leading a more meaningful life. This principle encourages concentration on the here and now, avoiding rumination about the past or anxiety about the future. This focus transforms our relationship with time and enhances our quality of life. Eliminating regret forms part of present moment awareness. Stoics teach that lamenting the past is useless since we cannot change it. Instead of getting lost in regrets, we should learn from our past mistakes and experiences. This perspective frees us from the weight of the past and allows us to focus our efforts on the present. Reducing anxiety about the future represents another crucial aspect. Worrying excessively about the future is another source of suffering. Stoics believe that while it's wise to plan and prepare, we must recognize life's inherent uncertainty and not allow anxiety about the future to dominate our thoughts and actions. Appreciating the present moment becomes central to this practice. The present is the only moment we truly have. Stoics encourage us to fully appreciate the present, finding joy in small things and recognizing the beauty of the world around us. This not only provides satisfaction, but also helps us cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Focusing on current tasks translates present moment awareness into practical action. Concentrating on the present also means being fully committed to the tasks we're performing. This means avoiding distractions and multitasking, which allows us to carry out our activities more effectively and with greater appreciation. The here and now, as a source of control, emphasizes that the only moment over which we have real control is the present. By directing our attention to the present, we can channel our efforts to make wise and ethical decisions in the here and now, without worrying excessively about what we cannot control in the future. Meditation and mindfulness practices serve as useful tools for developing present moment focus. Practices like meditation and mindfulness are helpful tools for developing a focus on the present. They help train our minds to be more present and conscious, reducing mental agitation and promoting tranquility. Reducing suffering through present moment awareness occurs because by living more in the present, we can experience less suffering caused by worries about the past or future. This not only improves our quality of life, but also allows us to make more informed and ethical decisions. The practice of indifference toward pleasures and pains challenges our relationship with the external world and sensory experiences, encouraging us to find a state of equanimity regarding these experiences. Stoics argue that the unbridled pursuit of pleasures and fear of pain are significant sources of human suffering. To achieve serenity and virtue, it's essential to adopt an attitude of healthy indifference toward these experiences. Prudence in pleasure guides the Stoic approach to enjoyment. Stoics don't advocate for total renunciation of pleasures, but rather for moderation and prudence. They remind us that the relentless pursuit of pleasure often leads to harmful excesses, while the pursuit of moderation helps us avoid the suffering that results from excess. Detachment from pain encourages developing courage and resilience to face pain and adversities calmly and bravely. Instead of fearing them, we can see them as opportunities to grow and strengthen our minds. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering, but rather not being controlled by our aversion to it. The principle of indifference toward external things means that things like wealth, social status, or material success are indifferent to our virtue and intrinsic happiness. This doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy good things in life, but that we shouldn't place our happiness exclusively in them, since they're outside our control. Emotional detachment represents the Stoic goal of developing healthy emotional detachment from external circumstances. This means we shouldn't let ourselves be dominated by our emotions in response to material gains or losses. Instead, we should cultivate an inner tranquility that remains constant regardless of external changes. The focus on virtue as the true source of contentment and happiness lies in the pursuit and practice of virtue. By prioritizing wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance in our lives, we find a more lasting and meaningful type of pleasure than that offered by ephemeral sensory pleasures. Self-control. In practicing indifference toward pleasures and pains requires a high level of self-control. This involves not being slaves to our desires and not being dominated by fear of pain. By developing this self-discipline, we can make more rational and ethical decisions. Self-knowledge serves as the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy and many other philosophical and spiritual traditions. For Stoics, understanding oneself is the essential starting point for mastering the mind and consequently life itself. Without this foundation, all other philosophical practices rest on unstable ground. Constant self-examination represents a fundamental Stoic practice. Stoics encourage us to engage in honest and continuous evaluation of ourselves. This involves observing our own thoughts, emotions, and actions objectively and impartially. It's like looking in a mental mirror and recognizing our virtues, flaws, and tendencies. Identifying desires and aversions forms a fundamental part of this self-evaluation. Recognizing our desires and aversions is essential because we're often dominated by irrational desires or unfounded aversions that cause suffering. By identifying them, we can begin to question their validity and work to control them. Reflection on our values encourages us to consider what is truly important to us and what we're seeking in life. This type of reflection helps align our actions with our values, fostering a more meaningful life. This regular examination prevents us from drifting through life unconsciously. Self-acceptance and constructive self-criticism work together in self-knowledge. It also involves the ability to accept ourselves as we are, with all our imperfections. However, this doesn't mean complacency, but rather recognizing areas where we can improve and grow. Avoiding self-deception represents a crucial warning from Stoics against self-deception, which is the tendency to justify our actions and rationalize harmful behaviors. Through self-knowledge, we can detect when we fall into this type of mental trap. Continuous improvement through self-knowledge isn't an end in itself, but a means to achieve self-transformation and continuous improvement. By understanding ourselves better, we can work on building a more Stoic mindset, cultivating virtues such as courage, temperance, wisdom, and justice. As we explore the principles of Stoic philosophy, we find a map for mastering our minds and consequently our lives. From self-knowledge to the pursuit of virtue as the supreme good, these teachings empower us to navigate the turbulent waters of existence with wisdom and ethics. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true wealth resides in inner peace, self-transformation, and the constant pursuit of virtue. In a world that often presents us with challenges and uncertainties, Stoic philosophy offers a guiding light toward a more balanced and meaningful life. It's a philosophy that reminds us that despite external circumstances, we have the power to shape our minds and our choices. This power isn't just theoretical, it's practical and immediately applicable to every situation we face. The beauty of Stoic philosophy lies not just in its intellectual elegance, but in its practical utility. These aren't abstract concepts meant only for academic discussion. They're tools for living that have been tested by centuries of human experience. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he wasn't composing a theoretical treatise, but recording practical reminders for himself about how to live well despite the enormous pressures of ruling an empire. The modern applications of these ancient principles are endless. In our age of constant connectivity, social media pressure, and information overload, the Stoic emphasis on focusing on what we can control becomes even more relevant. When we're bombarded with news of events worldwide that we cannot influence, the Stoic practice of distinguishing between what is and isn't within our control saves us from overwhelming anxiety and helplessness. In our relationships, Stoic principles help us love without attachment, support without controlling, and maintain our boundaries without becoming hostile. We learn to accept others as they are while taking responsibility for our own responses to their behavior. This creates healthier, more sustainable relationships built on mutual respect rather than codependency or manipulation. In our careers, Stoicism teaches us to focus on doing excellent work rather than obsessing over outcomes we cannot guarantee. We learn to find satisfaction in the process rather than making our happiness dependent on external recognition or specific results. This approach actually tends to lead to better outcomes because we're more focused and less anxious. The Stoic approach to suffering is perhaps its most profound contribution to human wisdom. Rather than seeing suffering as something to be avoided at all costs, Stoics understand it as an inevitable part of life that can serve as a teacher if we approach it with the right mindset. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering or passively accepting injustice, but rather developing the resilience to handle life's difficulties with grace and dignity. The practice of these principles requires patience and persistence. Like physical fitness, mental and emotional fitness requires regular exercise. The Stoic practices of morning reflection, evening review, negative visualization, and present moment awareness are all exercises designed to strengthen our mental muscles and develop our capacity for wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. The ultimate goal of Stoic practice isn't to become emotionally numb or intellectually rigid, but to develop the flexibility to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than react out of impulse or emotion. This flexibility, paradoxically, comes from having strong principles that guide our choices even when external circumstances are chaotic or unpredictable. As we conclude this exploration of Stoic principles, it's important to remember that this philosophy is not about perfection, but about progress. The ancient Stoics themselves acknowledged that achieving perfect virtue was likely impossible for most people, but they insisted that the journey toward virtue was worthwhile regardless of whether we reach the destination. The daily practice of these principles gradually transforms not just how we think about life's challenges, but how we experience them. We begin to find a deep source of contentment that doesn't depend on external circumstances. We develop resilience that allows us to bounce back from setbacks more quickly. We cultivate wisdom that helps us make better decisions and avoid unnecessary suffering. Perhaps most importantly, we discover that true freedom doesn't come from having unlimited choices or perfect circumstances, but from having the inner resources to respond to any situation with integrity and wisdom. This is the ultimate promise of Stoic philosophy. Not a life without difficulties, but a mind capable of handling any difficulty with grace. The ancient wisdom of the Stoics remains as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago, because human nature hasn't fundamentally changed. We still struggle with the same basic challenges: how to handle disappointment, how to maintain relationships, how to find meaning in our work, how to face mortality, and how to live with integrity in an imperfect world. The Stoics offer us time-tested tools for addressing these eternal human concerns with wisdom, courage, and serenity. Let me share something with you that might sound almost too incredible to believe, but I promise you it's the honest truth. 7 simple habits completely transformed my life in just 1 week. Yes, you read that correctly. 1 single week. I know it sounds like one of those exaggerated claims you see splashed across clickbait headlines, but this isn't some theoretical self-help nonsense or recycled advice you've heard 1,000 times before. These are real, raw, and brutally honest habits that I personally integrated into my daily routine, and the transformation I experienced was nothing short of extraordinary. I'm going to take you through each of these habits, not just explaining what they are, but sharing the genuine struggles I faced, the breakthrough moments that left me speechless, and the triumphs that completely changed how I view life itself. This isn't going to be a sanitized version of personal development where everything flows smoothly and effortlessly. I'm going to tell you about the moments when I wanted to quit, when my old patterns tried to drag me back, and how I pushed through to discover something remarkable on the other side. Whether you're looking to boost your productivity to levels you never thought possible, improve your mental health in ways that actually stick, or simply make positive changes in your everyday life that compound into something magnificent, these habits can help you get there. But here's what makes this different from every other self-improvement content you've consumed. These aren't just theoretical concepts or motivational fluff. They are practical, actionable steps that you can start implementing today, right now, regardless of where you are in your life. I'm going to share personal stories and insights from my own journey, giving you an unfiltered look at how these habits worked for me. You'll hear about the specific moments when everything clicked, the days when I struggled to maintain momentum, and the surprising discoveries I made about myself along the way. This is about real transformation, not temporary motivation that fades after a few days. The first habit that fundamentally altered the trajectory of my life was waking up early, and I need to be completely transparent with you about this because it wasn't easy. I was never, and I mean absolutely never, a morning person. My bed was my sanctuary, my safe haven, my best friend in the entire world. I used to hit the snooze button more times than I could count, sometimes for over an hour, turning my mornings into a chaotic symphony of alarms and rushed panic. My typical morning routine was a disaster waiting to happen. I would wake up feeling groggy and disoriented, scramble to get ready while checking my phone for messages and notifications, grab whatever food I could find on the way out, and arrive at work or my first appointment of the day feeling like I was already behind. It was like starting every single day on the wrong foot, setting a tone of stress and reactivity that would follow me throughout the entire day. But something inside me knew this pattern wasn't serving me anymore. I had read about successful people who swore by early rising, but I always dismissed it as something that worked for other people. Certainly not for someone like me who seemed genetically programmed to be a night owl. However, after yet another morning where I felt rushed and anxious before 9 a.m., I decided to give this whole early rising thing a genuine shot. I started by setting my alarm for 5 a.m., which felt absolutely ridiculous at the time. The first few days were nothing short of brutal. I remember dragging myself out of bed on that first morning, feeling like I was moving through thick mud, every cell in my body screaming at me to go back to sleep. I stumbled around my apartment like a zombie, questioning my sanity and wondering if this experiment was really worth the suffering I was putting myself through. But something incredible started happening around the third day. I began to appreciate something I had never experienced before: the quiet and profound stillness of the early morning hours. There was something almost magical, almost sacred about being awake before the rest of the world, when everything was calm and peaceful. The usual chaos of traffic, notifications, and other people's energy hadn't yet invaded the day. It was just me, the silence, and endless possibilities. With these extra hours in the morning, I discovered time for things I never seemed to have time for before. I started my day with light exercise, nothing too intense or intimidating, just some gentle stretching or a short jog around my neighborhood. This wasn't about becoming a fitness fanatic overnight. It was about gently waking up my body and energizing myself for whatever the day might bring. The physical movement acted like a natural alarm clock, clearing away the mental fog and replacing it with clarity and vitality. I also began spending time in meditation and setting clear intentions for the day ahead. These few moments of mindfulness, which might have seemed insignificant to an outside observer, made an enormous difference in my overall mindset and productivity. Instead of reacting to whatever the day threw at me, I was proactively choosing how I wanted to show up in the world. Another surprising and delightful benefit of waking up early was that I no longer felt rushed or panicked. I had ample time to enjoy a healthy breakfast, really tasting my food instead of mindlessly consuming it. I could sip my coffee slowly, appreciating its warmth and aroma, and thoughtfully plan out my day. This unrushed start set a completely different tone for everything that followed. I was more organized, significantly less stressed, and felt a greater sense of control over my time and energy. One personal experience that stands out with crystal clarity was the morning I decided to watch the sunrise from my balcony. It was a simple gesture, but it turned into a profoundly beautiful moment that I'll never forget. As the sky gradually changed colors from deep purple to soft pink to brilliant gold, and as the world slowly began to wake up around me, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace that I hadn't experienced in years. It was in that quiet moment, watching the day begin, that I truly understood the transformative power of waking up early. The second habit that revolutionized my life was committing to daily exercise, and I need to be completely honest about my starting point because it wasn't pretty. I wasn't always the most active person. In fact, I was the opposite. I was a master at finding creative excuses to avoid working out. I'm too tired. I don't have enough time. I'll start tomorrow when I'm more motivated. My schedule is too unpredictable. I don't have the right equipment. Sound familiar? I had an excuse for every possible scenario, and I had convinced myself that regular exercise just wasn't realistic for someone with my lifestyle. But one day, after looking in the mirror and feeling disconnected from my own body, after climbing a flight of stairs and feeling winded, after another night of restless sleep and low energy, I decided that enough was enough. I made a commitment to move my body intentionally every single day for 1 week, and I was determined to see what would happen if I actually followed through. I started small and manageable, just 20 minutes a day. I knew that if I set unrealistic expectations, I would set myself up for failure, so I kept it simple and varied. I mixed it up between gentle yoga sessions, easy jogs around my neighborhood, and basic strength training exercises using just my body weight. I wanted to keep it interesting and enjoyable so I wouldn't get bored and quit halfway through, which had been my pattern in the past. The first few days were genuinely challenging. My muscles were sore in places I had forgotten existed, and I felt more exhausted than I had anticipated. There were moments when I seriously questioned whether this was worth the discomfort, but I kept reminding myself why I was doing this, to feel better both physically and mentally, to reconnect with my body, and to break the cycle of sedentary living that had become my default. Then, around the fourth day, something absolutely amazing happened. I woke up feeling more energized than I had in months. My mood had improved drastically. I was less irritable, more optimistic, and generally more positive about life. I realized that those 20 minutes of daily exercise weren't just about burning calories or building muscle. They were about giving myself dedicated time to focus purely on me, to release accumulated stress and tension, and to boost those wonderful natural chemicals called endorphins that make us feel good. One morning that remains vivid in my memory, I was lacing up my sneakers for what had become my regular jog. It was a crisp, clear day with perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze. As I ran through my neighborhood, I felt a sense of freedom and mental clarity that I hadn't experienced in what felt like forever. It was just me, the open road stretching ahead, and my thoughts flowing freely. That sense of connection to myself and the world around me was truly empowering and addictive in the best possible way. I also started noticing physical changes that went beyond what I could see in the mirror. My posture improved significantly. I was standing taller and sitting straighter without having to consciously think about it. I felt stronger and more capable in my daily activities. I noticed a difference in my overall fitness level and endurance. But perhaps the biggest change was in my mindset and relationship with my body. Exercise transformed from something I dreaded and avoided into something I looked forward to and cherished. It became a form of self-care rather than a chore or obligation. Another personal highlight that completely shifted my perspective was trying yoga for the first time. I had always been hesitant, convinced that I wasn't flexible enough or that it wouldn't provide a real workout. I had all these preconceived notions about what yoga was supposed to be and whether someone like me belonged in that space. But after a few sessions, I fell completely in love with the practice. Yoga taught me to be present in my body, to breathe deeply and intentionally, and to listen to what my body was telling me. It was a transformative experience that went far beyond the physical benefits and touched something deeper in my soul. Incorporating daily exercise into my routine made me realize a fundamental truth. Taking care of my body directly and immediately impacted my mental health and overall happiness. It's not about achieving perfection or pushing yourself to dangerous extremes. It's not about comparing yourself to fitness influencers or trying to look a certain way. It's about finding a form of movement that brings you joy and making it a regular, non-negotiable part of your life. The third habit that completely revolutionized my inner world was journaling, and I have to admit that I was initially very skeptical about this practice. I used to think journaling was something only certain types of people did, those who had loads of free time on their hands or who were naturally introspective and philosophical. I was doubtful about the whole concept. I mean, who really has time to sit down and write about their day when there's so much going on in life? It seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford and a practice that wouldn't provide any real value. But 1 week of consistent, honest journaling completely shifted my perspective and understanding of this simple practice. It became not just a habit, but a cornerstone of my personal growth journey and emotional well-being. I started as simply as possible to avoid overwhelming myself. Every night before bed, I dedicated just 10 minutes to journaling. I bought a plain, inexpensive notebook and found a pen that felt comfortable in my hand. No fancy apps with complicated features, no pressure to make it look aesthetically pleasing or Instagram-worthy, no rules about what I should or shouldn't write about. It was just me, a blank page, and whatever thoughts were swirling around in my head. The first night was awkward and uncomfortable. I stared at that blank page for what felt like an eternity, completely unsure of what to write or how to begin. But then I started with something basic and straightforward: how my day went, what made me happy, what frustrated me, and what I struggled with. There was no judgment, no editing, no trying to sound smart or profound, just honest, stream of consciousness writing. As the days progressed, something beautiful began to happen. I started diving deeper into my thoughts and feelings. I wrote about my goals and dreams, my fears and insecurities, my relationships and career aspirations. It was like having the most honest conversation with myself that I had ever experienced. I wasn't performing for anyone else or trying to present a polished version of my thoughts. I was just being completely authentic and raw. That's when the real magic happened. I began to notice patterns in my thoughts and behaviors that I had never recognized before. I realized that some of the things I worried about obsessively were completely outside of my control and therefore not worth my mental energy. At the same time, I identified other areas of my life where I could take concrete, actionable steps to improve my situation. One night that stands out clearly in my memory, I was writing about a particularly stressful day at work. Instead of just complaining or venting, the act of putting my thoughts on paper helped me process my emotions more effectively. I wrote about what specifically had stressed me out, how those situations made me feel, and what I could do differently the next time I encountered similar challenges. This simple act of reflection and analysis helped me gain clarity and feel more in control of my emotional responses. Another powerful aspect of journaling that surprised me was how it allowed me to track my progress and growth over time. I made a point of noting down small victories and milestones, no matter how minor they might have seemed to an outside observer. Looking back at these entries filled me with a genuine sense of accomplishment and motivated me to keep pushing forward toward my goals. For instance, I wrote extensively about a presentation I was nervous about and documented my entire preparation process. Seeing that journey from anxiety to confidence recorded in my journal was incredibly encouraging and proved to me that I was capable of growth and change. I also incorporated a gratitude section into my daily journaling practice. Every single day, I wrote down 3 specific things I was grateful for, ranging from major life blessings to tiny, everyday moments of joy. This simple practice shifted my mental focus from what was lacking or missing in my life to appreciating and acknowledging what I already had. It was a seemingly small change that brought significantly more positivity and contentment into my daily experience. One particularly memorable journal entry was about a random act of kindness I experienced from a complete stranger. Someone helped me when I was struggling with heavy grocery bags, and writing about this brief interaction not only made me feel grateful, but also inspired me to look for opportunities to pay that kindness forward to others. Through consistent journaling, I discovered so much about myself, my deeper desires, my hidden fears, my genuine strengths, and my areas for improvement. It became a form of free therapy, a way to untangle the complex web of thoughts and emotions that we all carry around, but rarely take time to examine. The journal provided a completely safe space where I could be brutally honest with myself without fear of judgment or criticism from others. The fourth habit that transformed my relationship with food and my body was practicing mindful eating. This was a significant change for me because, like so many people in our fast-paced world, I used to eat on autopilot, barely paying attention to what or how much I was consuming. My meals were often rushed and distracted affairs, eaten while scrolling through my phone, watching television, or working on my laptop. I had no idea how much this mindless eating pattern was affecting my overall well-being, digestion, and satisfaction with food, until I decided to experiment with mindful eating for one full week. Mindful eating is fundamentally about paying complete attention to the experience of eating and drinking, both what's happening inside your body and in your external environment. It's about savoring each bite, noticing the complex flavors and textures, and even appreciating the sounds and aromas of your food. It's about eating with intention and awareness rather than on autopilot. I made a commitment to eat all my meals mindfully, which required some significant changes to my usual routine. I started by creating a proper environment for my meals. I cleared my dining table of clutter, set a nice place for myself with actual dishes instead of eating from containers, and completely removed any distractions. No phone within reach, no television playing in the background, no laptop open with work emails demanding my attention. It felt strange and almost uncomfortable at first to sit quietly with just my meal, but it quickly became a calming and centering ritual that I looked forward to. I began each meal with a few deep, intentional breaths to center myself and bring my full attention to the present moment. This simple practice helped me transition from whatever I had been doing before the meal to being fully present with my food. One of the first things I noticed was how much more I genuinely enjoyed my food. When I took the time to really taste and appreciate each bite, foods that I had eaten hundreds of times before suddenly revealed new and delightful flavors and textures that I had never really noticed. The crunch of fresh vegetables became more satisfying, the sweetness of ripe fruit more pronounced, and even simple foods like bread or rice had subtle complexities that I had completely missed when eating mindlessly. It was like experiencing food in high definition for the first time. Another major change was how much more satisfied and content I felt after meals. By eating slowly and paying attention to my body's signals, I gave myself time to recognize when I was actually full. This was a significant shift for me because I used to eat quickly and often ended up overeating, leaving me feeling uncomfortably stuffed and sluggish. By tuning into my hunger and fullness cues, I found that I naturally ate appropriate portions and felt satisfied rather than stuffed. One experience that perfectly illustrates this transformation involved a simple bowl of oatmeal. Normally, I would have wolfed it down while checking emails or reading news articles, barely tasting it. But this time, I ate it slowly and mindfully, savoring the creamy texture, appreciating the subtle sweetness of the honey I had drizzled on top, and noticing how the warmth felt comforting in my stomach. That simple bowl of oatmeal became a moment of gratitude and mindfulness that set a positive, peaceful tone for the rest of my day. I also started becoming much more aware of how different foods made me feel physically and emotionally. Heavy, processed foods left me feeling sluggish, bloated, and mentally foggy, while fresh, whole foods made me feel energized, light, and mentally clear. This awareness led me to make healthier choices naturally, without feeling deprived, restricted, or like I was forcing myself to follow a strict diet. Another important aspect of mindful eating was becoming aware of the emotional connections and triggers I had with food. I started recognizing when I was eating out of boredom, stress, loneliness, or habit, rather than actual physical hunger. This awareness was incredibly powerful and eye-opening. Instead of mindlessly reaching for snacks when I felt restless or anxious, I could pause and address the underlying emotion. Maybe I needed a break from work, some relaxation, or a conversation with a friend, rather than a bag of chips or a piece of chocolate. The fifth habit that dramatically improved my mental health and productivity was limiting my screen time. And I have to admit, this was probably the most challenging habit for me to implement. We live in an increasingly digital world where screens are everywhere, and it's incredibly easy to get sucked into endless hours of scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, or compulsively checking emails and messages. I had gradually fallen into a pattern where I was spending most of my free time staring at various screens, and I didn't realize how much this constant digital stimulation was negatively affecting my mental health, my productivity, my sleep quality, and my ability to be present in my own life. I decided to set some firm boundaries and see what would happen if I consciously reduced my screen time. I established a daily limit of just 1 hour for non-work-related screen time. This meant no mindless scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, no endless YouTube rabbit holes, no late-night Netflix binges, and no compulsive checking of news websites or social media apps. It was genuinely difficult at first, because I had become so accustomed to filling every spare moment, every moment of potential boredom, with some form of screen-based entertainment. The first thing I noticed was how much more time I actually had in my day. I hadn't realized how much of my precious time was being consumed by screens until I consciously limited it. Those minutes and hours that I had been spending scrolling or watching suddenly became available for other activities, and I was amazed at how much extra time I discovered. With those newfound hours, I found myself naturally rediscovering old hobbies and interests that I had neglected for months or even years. I picked up books that I had been meaning to read, started drawing and sketching again, something I had loved as a child but abandoned as an adult, and even tried my hand at cooking new and interesting recipes. These activities brought me a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment that scrolling through social media never could. One evening that particularly stands out in my memory, instead of automatically turning on the television after dinner, as I usually did, I decided to take a walk in the nearby park. The fresh air filling my lungs, the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, and the simple act of moving my body through natural surroundings felt incredibly rejuvenating and grounding. It was such a stark contrast to the usual screen-induced lethargy and mental fog that I had become accustomed to. That evening walk became a cherished part of my daily routine, something I genuinely looked forward to and enjoyed immensely. Another significant change was in my sleep quality, which improved dramatically once I limited my screen time, especially before bed. I used to take my phone to bed with me, scrolling through social media or watching videos until I felt sleepy. But this habit often left me feeling mentally wired and physically restless, making it difficult to fall asleep and leading to poor quality, fragmented sleep. By eliminating screen time in the hour before bed, I found it much easier to wind down naturally and fall into deep, restorative sleep. I created a new bedtime routine that didn't involve any screens, reading physical books, practicing meditation or deep breathing exercises, or simply reflecting peacefully on my day. This change led to significantly deeper and more restful sleep, which made an enormous difference in my overall energy levels, mood, and cognitive function throughout the following day. I also noticed substantial improvements in my mental health and emotional well-being. Without the constant barrage of news updates, social media comparisons, and digital distractions, I felt notably less anxious and more present in my actual life. I was more focused during conversations with friends and family, more attentive to the people around me, and more engaged in my daily activities and responsibilities. It was like a mental fog had lifted, allowing me to see and experience life with greater clarity and appreciation. These 7 habits, waking up early, exercising daily, journaling consistently, eating mindfully, limiting screen time, along with the other practices I incorporated, created a compound effect that transformed not just my daily routine, but my entire approach to living. Each habit supported and reinforced the others, creating a positive feedback loop that made sustainable change not just possible, but inevitable. The transformation wasn't just about productivity or efficiency, though those certainly improved. It was about reconnecting with myself, understanding what I truly needed to thrive, and creating a lifestyle that supported my physical health, mental well-being, and personal growth. These habits helped me become more intentional with my time, more present in my relationships, and more aligned with my values and goals. If you're feeling inspired to try any of these habits, my advice is to start small and be patient with yourself. Choose one habit that resonates most strongly with you and commit to it for just 1 week. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. That's a recipe for burnout and disappointment. Instead, focus on consistent, small changes that you can realistically maintain, and trust that these changes will compound over time into something truly remarkable. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's about making small, manageable changes that accumulate into substantial transformations over time. Your journey will be unique to you, and what works for one person might need to be adapted for another. The key is to experiment, pay attention to how these changes affect you personally, and adjust accordingly. These habits have the power to create significant positive changes in your life, just as they did for me. If they could work for someone who was initially skeptical and resistant to change, they can work for anyone who's willing to commit to the process and trust in the power of small, consistent actions. Imagine a life where every day has meaning, where your actions, thoughts, and decisions all move in the same organized and firm direction. Sounds difficult, doesn't it? But the Stoics knew that without order, life inevitably crumbles. When you don't have a plan, every problem drags you down, every distraction defeats you, and every emotion dominates you. It's no coincidence that the great philosophers insisted so much on discipline and organization. Today, I'm going to reveal to you 15 essential lessons from Stoicism so that you can take total control of your life. If you apply these ideas, you won't just stop feeling lost. You'll build a solid and serene existence. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern society has forgotten, that true freedom comes not from having unlimited choices, but from having the wisdom to choose what truly matters and the discipline to follow through on those choices consistently. The foundation of a well-lived life rests on understanding a fundamental truth that many people avoid until pain no longer allows them to continue ignoring it. We've been taught to wait, to have faith that something or someone will come to rescue us, to solve our problems, to give us a new opportunity without us having to lift a finger. But the harsh truth is this: no one will come to save you. There is no mentor, partner, friend, boss, or guru who can do the work that only you can do for yourself. The disorder you feel inside and outside of you is the direct consequence of every choice you avoided, every uncomfortable conversation you postponed, every habit you knew you should break, but decided to keep feeding. As long as you continue denying that you are the main person responsible for the state you find yourself in, you'll remain trapped. And it's not punishment, it's consequence. The external chaos, that accumulation of tasks, toxic relationships, debts, dissatisfaction, lack of direction, is nothing more than a mirror of your internal disorder. And yet, there you are, convinced that it's normal to live exhausted, confused, dissatisfied. The dangerous thing isn't the chaos itself, but how you get used to it, how your mind begins to see it as part of your identity. That's just how I am, you tell yourself. My life is like this. And in that moment, you've fallen into the most destructive trap of all, believing there's no way out. But there is a way out. It's just not comfortable, not quick, not magical. The first step isn't making lists or reading more books or waiting for this stage to pass. The first step, the most brutal of all, is assuming total responsibility for your life. Not partial, not I have some fault. Total. Everything you've tolerated, everything you've allowed, everything you've let grow due to lack of action is where it is because you let it be there. And yes, it can hurt to admit it, but it's also liberating because if you created it, you can change it. Marcus Aurelius knew this when he wrote that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, and the quality of your thoughts depends on the level of responsibility you're willing to assume. You can't keep blaming your parents, your past, the system, your ex, the weather, traffic, the algorithm. The day you stop pointing outward and begin to look inward, that day you'll start to recover your power. How do you know if you're stuck in chaos? Observe your symptoms. I'm not talking about illnesses, I'm talking about clear signs. You postpone everything. You surround yourself with people who don't inspire you. You complain more than you give thanks. You live reactively instead of consciously. Your body is tired for no apparent reason. And when no one sees you, you feel like you're wasting your potential. That's the silent cry of your soul asking you to wake up. But you choose to silence it with distractions, with food, with series, with alcohol, with social media, with anything that prevents you from facing the obvious. Your life won't change until you change. Epictetus taught that we cannot control what happens, but we can control how we respond to it. The question is, are you going to keep reacting like a victim, or are you going to respond like the protagonist of your story? Because you decide whether you use your pain as an excuse or as an impulse. No one will come to lift you up, and that's not a reason to give up, but to strengthen yourself. Because if you take the first step, if you take command, then everything starts to change. Not because the world is more just, but because you become stronger. The world remains the same, but you're no longer the same. Today is the day to look at yourself in the mirror without excuses, to stop lying to yourself, to do what you know you must do. You don't need to be motivated. You just need to be fed up with staying the same. Wake up. Your life won't fix itself. Get up, take control, and start building the version of yourself you deserve to be. It won't be easy, but it will be yours. Your schedule is your soul. Although it sounds exaggerated, it's not, because what you do every day, hour after hour, task after task, silently shapes who you are and who you're becoming. It's not what you think about yourself that determines your life, it's what you do with your time. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter to you, you're selling a part of your existence, and not in exchange for freedom, but for distraction, for validation, for a false sensation of movement. There's an uncomfortable truth that many prefer to avoid. If you don't design your day, someone else will do it for you. And that someone else could be your boss, your social media, your fears, or any person who knows how to take advantage of your indecision. Because time, unlike money, isn't saved. It's only invested or wasted. There's no middle ground. We've been made to believe that being busy is a sign of success, that if you're not rushing, if you're not answering messages constantly, if you don't have meetings all day, then you're wasting time. But being busy isn't the same as being productive. In fact, many of those who work the most advance the least. Why? Because they don't have clarity, because they confuse movement with progress, because their schedule isn't built from intention, but from reaction. The result? Days that go by in urgent but not important tasks, weeks that feel repetitive, years that pass and leave you with the feeling that you did a lot but achieved little. Marcus Aurelius warned of this centuries ago. Don't act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death treads on your heels. While you live, while it's possible, be good to yourself. And being good to yourself starts with honoring your time. Your schedule shouldn't be a prison, but a reflection of your deepest priorities. Most people don't design their day, they simply survive it. They wake up, and the first thing they do is check their phone, giving the world direct access to their attention, and from there, everything goes downhill. They jump from one task to another without intention, react to the urgent, postpone the important, and go to bed, exhausted but unsatisfied. Sound familiar? Then you need something more than a task list. You need a philosophy of life applied to time. And that begins with a brutally honest question. How would my day be if I truly respected myself? If you valued your energy, your mind, your dreams, what would you say yes to? What would you say no to? Designing a schedule that works for you isn't about filling it with activities. It's about learning to choose consciously. It's about prioritizing what brings you closer to the life you want to build and eliminating without guilt what only fills space. Sometimes the greatest productivity is in what you decide not to do. Start small. Block moments to think, to create, to take care of your body. Protect those hours as if they were sacred, because they are. What's not on your calendar isn't in your life. It's not enough to desire time for yourself. You must make space for it. And yes, you'll have to learn to say no without unnecessary justifications, without feeling guilty. Every no you give from self-respect is a yes to your peace, your focus, your evolution. Epictetus taught that freedom isn't in doing what one wants, but in not being enslaved by others' desires. Saying no isn't being selfish, it's being conscious. Because if you don't defend your time, no one will do it for you. Life is composed of days, days of hours, and hours of choices. If you don't choose, they'll choose for you, and they'll do it without thinking about what's best for you. So look at it clearly. Your schedule isn't just paper or an app. It's your soul written in minutes. Every blank space is an opportunity, every commitment is a promise, and every day you live without intention is a day that doesn't return. Rituals that save lives, it's not an exaggeration. They're those small, apparently insignificant moments at the beginning and end of your day that determine whether you're building a life with intention or surviving in automatic mode. The first 30 minutes after waking up and the last 30 before sleeping are sacred. They're the doors through which enters the energy that defines your day or the chaos that ruins it. What you do right upon waking isn't a detail, it's a declaration. You're telling the world and yourself who's in control. And if your first act is opening your phone, immersing yourself in messages, news, social media, or pending tasks, you've just ceded the helm of your life to external forces. You've renounced your mental clarity before having your first cup of coffee. The same happens at night. If you end the day in front of a bright screen, consuming useless information, comparing yourself, avoiding silence with distractions, you're closing the day with a saturated mind and an agitated body. You're not resting, you're just escaping. The Stoics knew that control begins in the simplest things. Marcus Aurelius began his days remembering that he was made to act with virtue, not to please passing pleasures. You too can recover dominion over your time and your mind if you decide to ritualize your awakening and your rest. It's not about following a perfect routine taken from a book, but about designing your own rituals, those that align with what you need, with what you want to cultivate. Maybe it's writing your thoughts before the noise of the world drowns them out. Maybe reading something that elevates your mind, breathing in silence, stretching your body with respect, or simply looking out the window and remembering that you're alive. At night, maybe you need to let go of the day by writing what you learned, being grateful for what happened, or simply observing how you felt without judgment. Closing with intention, like someone lowering a curtain, knowing there will be another performance tomorrow. That type of ritual not only calms the mind, it trains the brain to find order in the midst of chaos. The problem is that we've underestimated the power of the everyday. We think that to change our life, we need something enormous, a dramatic turn, an epiphany. But what changes your life are small habits repeated with consciousness. Those first and last decisions of the day have a domino effect. If you start in disorder, everything drags disorder. If you end in agitation, you don't rest. You just repeat tomorrow's anxiety. That's why you need to eliminate distractions before they eliminate you. Your phone isn't the problem. The problem is your relationship with it. Notifications aren't the enemy. The enemy is your dependence on them. Every time you choose a distraction, you're saying, "This deserves more of my attention than my peace, my clarity, my purpose." And that, repeated every day, slowly destroys your life without you realizing it. You can't aspire to a full life if you don't master the first and last acts of each day. The rest can vary, your work, your relationships, your responsibilities. But those 2 moments, dawn and closure, must be yours, sacred, non-negotiable, because that's where you plant the seeds of presence, calm, and focus. Design your personal ritual system. Don't copy someone else's. Ask yourself, what do I need to start my day in peace? What helps me close with lightness? Create your formula, protect it, make it part of your identity. When those rituals become part of you, you'll notice something powerful. Days will stop seeming like a constant battle and start feeling like something you're directing. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer a victim of inertia. Your environment is a reflection of your mind. It's not just a pretty metaphor, it's a reality you can verify right now. Look around you. Observe your desk, your room, your kitchen, your car. What do you see? Disorder, accumulation, things out of place that you've been ignoring for days, weeks, or even months. That's not coincidence. It's a visual extension of what's happening inside you. And although you want to deny it, although you say that's how your creativity works, or that you'll organize it when you have time, the truth is that external chaos is feeding internal chaos. Every object out of place, every forgotten corner, Every space that seems to be waiting for a decision that never comes silently drains your energy. You don't notice it immediately, but you feel it. Lack of clarity, diffuse anxiety, fatigue without apparent cause. Your environment is sabotaging your emotional stability, and until you face it, you'll continue feeling stuck. Disorder isn't just an aesthetic problem, it's a mental problem. Physical accumulation is often a form of evasion. You keep objects just in case, maintain clothes you don't wear, preserve papers, files, memories that only occupy space but don't contribute anything to you. And without realizing it, you're repeating the same pattern with your emotions, your thoughts, your relationships. You postpone decisions, accumulate pending matters, sustain bonds that long ago stopped making sense. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." But how can you have clear thoughts if your environment screams confusion? You need to take control, not from rigidity, but from consciousness. Minimalist techniques aren't a trend. They're practical tools to recover your focus. It's not about throwing everything away. It's about keeping only what truly adds value. The first step is simple but powerful. Choose a small space, your desk, your backpack, a single drawer, and clean it with intention. Ask yourself with each object, does this provide me value or just occupy space? Do I really need it, or do I keep it out of inertia? Do it without guilt, do it with firmness, and repeat that process one corner at a time. You'll feel relief not just because the place looks better, but because your mind starts to breathe. Organizing your environment is a silent declaration. You're taking yourself seriously. You're deciding not to live surrounded by visual or mental noise. You're creating conditions for your energy to focus on what matters. Want more productivity? Start with order. Want more creativity? Free up space. Want more peace? Eliminate excess. The mind needs structure as much as freedom. A clean environment isn't rigid, it's functional. It's a space that reminds you of your priorities. It's not about perfection, but about purpose, and it's not limited to the physical. You also must organize your emotional environment. People who only appear to complain, habits that sabotage your discipline, routines you repeat only out of custom. All of that also occupies space, and worse, vital space. You can't advance if you're carrying relationships without reciprocity, if every day you feed habits that distance you from your best version, if you tolerate dynamics that you know no longer serve you. Epictetus explained it without beating around the bush. The key is knowing what things depend on you and what things don't. Your environment does depend on you, your decisions too. And by cleaning your external world, you're making the first concrete decision to also clean your internal world. What surrounds you influences more than you believe. If every time you enter your house you feel weight, noise, tension, you don't need more willpower, you need less disorder. Eliminate what doesn't add: things, people, habits. Make space for what does, for what elevates you, for what reminds you who you want to be. Because a clear mind needs a clear environment, and a life with direction can't flourish in the midst of chaos. Plan or perish. It can sound dramatic, but it's exact. Because if you're not planning long-term, you're condemned to live solving emergencies. Your life becomes a series of fires you put out without understanding why they burn. And worse, you feel like you're in motion but not advancing. You do and do and do, but nothing really changes. You're tired but not closer to what you really want. Why? Because you have no direction, Because you're confusing urgency with importance. Because you react but don't design. And design, vision, strategic thinking is what converts an agitated life into a life with purpose. Thinking long-term isn't postponing the present. It's precisely what gives it meaning. It's understanding that every decision today builds or destroys tomorrow's you. Epictetus said it clearly. Don't let yourself be dragged by the moment. Think about the consequences. But we live in a culture that idolizes the immediate, that rewards the urgent and despises the planned. And that's how we go, confusing activity with progress, obsessing over what happens this week, and forgetting that years are built day by day. Your future self doesn't need you to be perfect today. It needs you to start, to think, to choose with intention, to ask yourself, is what I'm doing bringing me closer to or further from the life I want to have? Having a strategic vision isn't just for entrepreneurs or leaders. It's for anyone who doesn't want to waste their existence. It's sitting with yourself and deciding, what do I want to achieve this year? What would be real progress? How does a well-lived life look for me? And once you have clarity, divide it, fragment it, translate that vision into concrete steps. Because big objectives aren't achieved with willpower, they're achieved with structure. It's useless to have annual goals if you don't convert them into monthly actions. And it's useless to have monthly goals if you don't translate them into what you'll do this week. Whoever doesn't do this exercise lives trapped between the anxiety of what they want and the guilt of what they don't do. They know they could do more, but don't know where to start, and that paralyzes them. Divide, organize, decide. Don't do it once and forget it. Return to your plan every week, adjust, recalibrate, but don't improvise your life as if your time had no value. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars and imperial decisions, found time to write, reflect, and think strategically. You, who aren't yet emperor, really can't do it? Plan, because the plan doesn't just give you direction, it also gives you peace. It reduces noise, removes the feeling of running without knowing where, and most importantly, it reminds you that you're not at the mercy of chaos, that you can choose, that you can act with perspective. Thinking long-term also implies renunciations. You can't do everything. You can't say yes to every opportunity, every plan, every whim. You have to protect your energy like a limited resource, because it is. And if everything matters to you, nothing matters to you. Choose, focus. Every time you say yes to something without thinking, you're saying no to what could transform your life. The art of planning is also the art of prioritizing, and prioritizing requires courage. The courage to disappoint external expectations, to honor your internal vision. Don't confuse movement with progress. Being busy doesn't mean advancing. Only those who plan, evaluate, and adjust can say with certainty, I'm closer than yesterday. The rest is illusion of progress, fatigue without direction, effort without purpose. Plan or perish. Not because everything can turn out exactly as you plan, but because without a plan you become a satellite orbiting around the urgent, the foreign, the trivial. What you consume affects how you think. It's not a trend or a nice term to sell you more productivity. It's an urgent necessity. Because although you don't notice it, what you consume every day with your eyes and ears is shaping your mind, your mood, and your way of thinking. I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about what you see on social media, what you hear in the news, what you read, who you talk to, what stimuli you allow to enter your nervous system without filter. We live in an era where information abundance is the new poison. And like all poison, its power is that it disguises itself as pleasure. You feel entertained, informed, connected, but little by little you become more anxious, more scattered, more addicted to noise. Don't you see it? Your mind no longer rests. It doesn't tolerate silence. It needs to fill every free space with something, a video, a notification, someone else's opinion. And that's how you lose the most valuable thing you have, your attention. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of pleasure and motivation. It's what makes you feel good when you achieve something, or when you see likes, infinite scrolls, impactful headlines. But if you're not conscious, you become a slave to stimuli that only give you immediate pleasure and cloud your capacity for focus. That's why you need a dopamine diet. It's not about eliminating technology, but about re-educating your brain so it can enjoy silence again. Deep reading, a conversation without distractions, working on something important without looking every 5 minutes for a new dose of novelty. Because while your mind is saturated with microstimuli, it will be incapable of sustaining attention on something truly worthwhile. Ask yourself this question with brutal honesty. Does what I consume daily nourish my mind, or just fill it with noise? It's not the same to read as to scroll. It's not the same to listen to a deep conversation as to expose yourself to a constant torrent of empty opinions. It's not the same to consciously choose what you let into your mind as to allow the algorithm to decide for you. Epictetus said, "What's important isn't what happens to you, but how you interpret it." But if your mind is full of mental garbage, how do you expect to interpret life with wisdom? Start healing your digital environment. Clean up accounts, channels, people, and sources that only feed drama, complaint, comparison. You don't need to know everything that happens in the world all the time. You don't need to have an opinion about every viral topic. You need clarity, you need focus, you need to protect your attention like the most valuable asset of the 21st century, because it is. The big companies fight for it, the networks are designed to hijack it, and you, without realizing it, are giving away hours of your life every day to content that leaves you nothing. A conscious mental diet implies establishing limits, moments of the day without screens, spaces without notifications, routines that prioritize the deep over the superficial. Maybe at first you'll feel restless. It's normal. You've trained your brain for hyperstimulation. But if you endure the initial discomfort, something starts to change. You think more clearly, make better decisions, concentrate better, and become more master of yourself. Because the noise goes down and the inner voice becomes clearer. Marcus Aurelius didn't have to deal with Instagram, but he understood that the mind had to be cultivated with rigor. The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts, he said. Today, we could say, your soul is dyed with the content you consume. You can't have peace if you feed your mind with chaos. You can't have direction if you fill your attention with distractions. You can't have clarity if every day you water the seed of anxiety with cheap dopamine. Toxic relationships don't occupy physical space like a messy room, but they generate the same effect in your mind: confusion, exhaustion, lack of clarity. They're bonds that camouflage themselves as normal, even necessary, but that day by day drain your energy, your self-esteem, and your focus. Sometimes it's a lifelong friend, sometimes a family member, a partner, a colleague, people with whom you share time but not purpose, presences that instead of propelling you, keep you stagnant. Not with screams, but with micro-gestures, constant criticism disguised as advice, sarcasm that devalues, emotional demand that makes you feel guilty for taking care of yourself. And the most dangerous thing is that many times you don't notice it until you're completely worn out. A toxic relationship doesn't always scream. Many times it whispers, manipulates, disguises itself as loyalty or commitment. But your body knows. You feel tense before seeing that person. It costs you to be yourself. You leave each encounter with less energy than before. You start modifying your behavior to avoid conflicts, to not bother, to not make it long. That's not connection. That's emotional prison. Marcus Aurelius said, "You must protect your mind more than anything else, because that's where your life is born." And if you're surrounded by people who sow doubt, insecurity, or guilt, your mind becomes a constant battlefield. The first step is detecting those bonds, not from judgment, but from consciousness. Ask yourself, do I feel lighter or more loaded after being with this person? Can I speak freely, or do I walk on tiptoes? Does it propel me to grow or sabotage me from the disguise of realism? The answers aren't always comfortable, but they are necessary. Because while you surround yourself with relationships that disperse you, it will be impossible to have direction. You can have a great vision, excellent habits, well-drawn plans, but if the people you have near you aren't aligned with your growth, you'll end up stagnant. And here something crucial enters: putting radical limits, not passive limits or eternal explanations, clear, firm limits, and if necessary, final ones. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone can enter without filter into your inner world. You're within your right to decide with whom you share your time, your energy, your vulnerability. Epictetus taught it with wisdom. Don't allow people to enter through the door of your conscious judgment. It's not egoism, it's mental health, it's self-love, it's understanding that your peace is worth more than any bond based on history or custom. But it's not just about eliminating the toxic, it's about cultivating relationships that organize you from within. People who elevate you with their example, who don't need to tell you how to be better because they show it in how they live. Relationships that don't compete with you but celebrate your advances, that confront you with respect, that inspire you without pressure, that make you feel more you, not less. Those relationships don't just give you peace, they give you direction because they align you with the version of you that you want to build. Learn to surround yourself with those who align you, not disperse you. Sometimes that means spending more time alone, and that's okay. Better chosen solitude than company that hurts. When you clean your emotional environment, the mind clears, the body relaxes, and life starts to organize itself from inside out. Your body is also organization. It's not a separate accessory from your mind. It's not a simple vehicle that takes you from one place to another. It's your first environment. It's the physical space where everything you dream, think, feel, and decide occurs. Ignoring it, neglecting it, or treating it as something secondary is an error that sooner or later comes due. Because the state of your body directly influences your mental clarity, your energy, your capacity for concentration, your emotional stability. You can't expect to have focus, serenity, and willpower if your body is exhausted, inflamed, disconnected from you. The connection is profound. When your body moves, your mind organizes. Exercise isn't just about aesthetics or physical health. It's a daily tool for mental cleaning. Every time you activate your body, you clean accumulated tensions, release dopamine naturally, oxygenate the brain, improve your mood. You don't need to train like an Olympic athlete. You don't need to complicate it. Simple daily routines, walking with intention, stretching upon waking, lifting weight consciously, practicing deep breathing while moving the body. What's important isn't intensity, it's constancy. Daily movement isn't a whim, it's an act of internal organization. And as important as moving is resting. We live in a world that idolizes constant activity, that measures personal value based on productivity, but forgets that rest isn't a waste of time, it's an investment in clarity. The saturated mind doesn't need more coffee, it needs more deep sleep. The tired body doesn't need motivation, it needs recovery. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote that you shouldn't force yourself beyond the natural limit of your capacities. Rest, restorative sleep, conscious pauses are essential parts of a well-organized life. They're not luxuries, they're necessities. And you can't talk about bodily organization without talking about nutrition. What you eat doesn't just affect your body, it directly affects your mind. Sugars, ultra-processed foods, excess alcohol, all of that doesn't just ruin your physique, it also sabotages your clarity, your energy, your focus. Eating well isn't an act of vanity, it's an act of mental strategy. Orderly nutrition, rich in real foods, in nutrients your brain needs, is a form of deep respect toward your potential. Don't eat to fill emotional voids. Eat to think better, to act better, to feel stronger at all levels. Your body is the container of your life, and like any container, if you don't take care of it, it deteriorates. It's not about seeking physical perfection, it's about building a physical state that serves you as a solid base for everything else. A brilliant mind trapped in a weak body will always be limited. A big purpose sustained by a fragile body will always be at risk. Order starts at home, and your body is your first home. You don't need to be radical, but you do need to be conscious. Move every day, sleep with priority, eat with wisdom, respect the natural cycles of your energy. Build a bodily routine that, far from overwhelming you, sustains you. Because when your body feels good, your mind has space to think better, decide better, create better. Chaotic money, chaotic life. It's an uncomfortable truth that many prefer to ignore until financial disorder explodes in their face. Because money, although it's just a medium of exchange, affects every corner of your life. Your mental peace, your decisions, your relationships, your capacity to project into the future. If you don't organize your finances, they will organize you, but not for your good. Living on the edge, counting coins, fearing every bill, every unexpected expense, isn't freedom. It's an invisible cage that keeps you always reactive, anxious, limited. And although you want to convince yourself that it's not all about money, the truth is that if you don't have control over it, it's very difficult to have control over any other aspect of your life. The first step isn't earning more. It's not looking for a raise or starting a business overnight. The first step is building a basic system of financial control, knowing how much comes in, knowing how much goes out, knowing what you spend every coin on. It's not exciting, it's not glamorous, it's discipline, it's respect for your energy. Every cent that passes through your hands represents time of your life invested. If you don't handle it carefully, you're despising your own effort. Marcus Aurelius said you should treat your mind like a sacred object. Today, we should say you should treat your money with the same reverence, because it's a reflection of your mind in action, organized or chaotic. Financial control doesn't mean extreme rigidity or living in scarcity. It means clarity. It means knowing that every expense has a purpose. Learning to spend with intention, not on impulse. Because every time you buy to anesthetize an emotion, to fill a void, to impress others, you don't just lose money, you lose control. And control lost in small decisions becomes big desperation when chaos reaches its maximum point. How many times have you justified an expense saying, "I deserve it," when in reality you were buying future anxiety? Epictetus taught to distinguish between what depends on you and what doesn't. Your spending habits depend on you, your financial decisions too. Organizing your money also implies eliminating mental debts, those unresolved commitments, those pending payments, those financial promises you drag month after month like a silent weight. It's not just economic debt. It's the constant stress of knowing you owe someone, that there's something pending that takes away freedom. Every debt you carry, visible or invisible, occupies space in your mind, drains attention, energy, focus. Freeing yourself from those loads isn't just a financial act, it's an act of mental health. And like everything in life, it starts with small decisions: paying what you owe, stopping accumulating senselessly, building an emergency fund, even if minimal, living below your possibilities to build above your expectations. Financial disorder isn't just a practical problem, it's a reflection of mental patterns you need to correct. And when you do, everything changes. You recover the sensation of dominion over your life, make decisions from calm, not from fear, invest in yourself, not in passing anesthesias, live with more dignity, more lightness, more clarity. Don't wait to hit bottom to act. Don't let your life be a constant reaction to emergencies you could have foreseen. Don't confuse momentary satisfaction with real progress. Organizing your money is organizing your life. It's not about being rich, it's about being free. Technology, your ally or your jailer. That radical is the choice you face every day, although you're not always conscious of it. Technology has the power to multiply your time, expand your organizational capacity, facilitate your life in previously unthinkable ways. But it also has the power to fragment your attention, disperse your mind, and trap you in endless cycles of distraction. It's not the tool that defines the effect, it's the use you make of it. You can use apps and digital systems as allies to build a clearer, more focused, more intentional life. Or you can end up being one more slave trapped in constant notifications, infinite scroll, the illusion of connection that actually distances you from yourself. The first step is conscious. Use technology as a means, not as an end. You don't need to eliminate your phone or flee the digital world. You need to domesticate it. You need to remind every tool who's in charge. Use list apps to empty your mind, not to fill it with unnecessary pending matters. Use reminders to build habits, not to live in a state of constant alarm. Use calendars to design your time, not to overload it with meaningless activities. The difference isn't in the tool, but in your intention. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world much less saturated with stimuli, but his advice remains valid. Master your mind, or you will be mastered by it. Today we could say, master your screens, or they will master you. Another essential act of modern order is digital cleaning. Just as you clean your physical space to free your mind, you need to clean your digital space to recover your attention. Accumulated emails, forgotten files, social media full of noise, all of that doesn't just occupy space in your devices, it occupies space in your mind. Schedule specific moments to delete what no longer serves. Unsubscribe from what you don't read. Delete apps that only serve to steal your time. Organize your files like you would organize your house, leaving only the essential, what truly adds. Creating a healthy relationship with the screen is indispensable if you want to live with intention in the 21st century. It's not just about usage time, but quality of use. Establish zones and schedules without screens, upon waking, during meals, before sleeping. Recover spaces of silence, deep reading, conversation without distractions. Every minute you spend without compulsively looking at a screen is an act of rebellion and mental health. Don't expect networks or apps to respect your attention. They're not designed for that. You must protect it. Technology is a powerful tool, but it will never be neutral. It will always tend to demand more from you, more time, more data, more attention. You decide whether you enter that game or convert it into a real ally. Well-used digital systems, clear lists, organized calendars, intelligent reminders can free your mind to think, create, and live better. But if you don't control them, you'll end up being a modern slave, hyper-connected and disconnected from yourself at the same time. Think of each app, each notification, each click as a question. Does this bring me closer to or further from the life I want to build? If you can't answer with a clear yes, it's time to reconsider it. Because in a world where attention is the most valuable resource, those who master their relationship with technology will be the truly free ones. Order isn't linear. You fall, but don't break. This is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons you can learn. No matter how much you advance, no matter how much discipline you build, there will be days of setback, of chaos, of exhaustion. You won't always get up on time. You won't always follow the perfect plan. You won't always maintain a clear mind. And that's okay. Falling isn't the problem. The problem is believing that falling means failing. The real disorder isn't in the setback, but in surrender. As long as you keep returning to your path, as long as you keep getting up again and again, you keep advancing. Life doesn't demand perfection, it demands constancy. Accepting setback without giving up is a skill that defines your long-term growth. It's not indulgence, it's not excuse, it's practical wisdom. Epictetus taught it. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters. When you stumble, when you break a streak, when you deviate from your habits, your first impulse might be to punish yourself, abandon, think that all the effort was in vain. But that narrative is a trap. Every fall is an opportunity for restart, and conscious restarts are one of the most underestimated powers you can cultivate. Don't wait to feel motivated. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Simply decide to return. Restart today, in this moment, with what you have, from where you are. Real discipline isn't rigid. It's flexible discipline. Structure without rigidity. A tree too rigid breaks in the storm. A flexible one bends but doesn't break. You need to build a structure that guides you but doesn't suffocate you. A system of habits and routines that sustain you but also allow you to adapt when life doesn't cooperate. Because life, sooner or later, won't cooperate. There will be unforeseen events, emotions, losses, overflows. And if your order only works when everything is under control, then it's not real order. True order is what maintains itself even when everything around changes. Learn to fall better each time. Not to avoid the fall, but to fall more wisely, not to dramatize the error, not to convert a stumble into a prophecy of failure. Marcus Aurelius wrote it in his Meditations. Perfection of character is living each day as if it were the last, without haste, without apathy, without hypocrisy. He doesn't say live without flaws. He says live with integrity. If today you failed, learn. If today you went backward, readjust. If today you were defeated by laziness, fear, distraction, don't stay there. Breathe, observe, correct, return. There's no path toward order that doesn't pass through disorder. There's no mastery without stumbles. There's no strength without scars. Every time you get up after falling, you don't just restore what you had built. You become stronger, more resilient, more master of yourself. Not because you don't fail, but because you no longer allow failure to define you. Life isn't about avoiding chaos, but learning to navigate it, building an internal structure so solid that even when everything seems to crumble, your decision to advance remains intact. That's real order. Not a straight line, but conscious advancement despite curves, bumps, and falls. Order as an act of self-love, not as an external obligation, not as a rigid imposition, but as a deep commitment to yourself. True order isn't born from obsession with control, but from reverence for your own life. Every space you clean, every habit you build, every routine you respect isn't simply efficiency, it's respect. It's remembering that your time, your energy, your existence deserve to be treated as something valuable. Order well understood is a gesture of love, care, dignity. When you understand this, your perception changes. Organizing isn't simply accommodating things or fulfilling lists. It's reaffirming that your life matters, that you're not here to survive in chaos, but to build with intention. Every small act of organization, closing your day well, preparing your workspace, caring for your body, cleaning your environment, becomes a silent prayer. I respect myself enough to create beauty around me. Marcus Aurelius spoke of living each day as if it were the last. And how would you live if you knew that every daily act is part of your personal legacy? Celebrate your progress, however small it may be, because constancy isn't maintained with brutal demand, but with genuine recognition. Every advance, every day that manages to be a little more organized, more intentional, is a victory that deserves to be seen. Don't look only for big changes. See yourself also in small moments of silent discipline. That time you resisted the temptation of distraction. That day you chose order instead of chaos. That instant when you treated yourself with respect. Celebrating progress is what nourishes constancy. Without joy in the path, order becomes prison. With joy, it becomes freedom. Transform your routines into meaningful rituals. You don't need to create complicated ceremonies, you just need to imbue with intention what you do. Upon waking, instead of running toward the phone, dedicate a moment to connect with yourself. When organizing your space, do it like someone honoring a temple. When planning your day, sow gratitude and purpose in each task. When you convert your daily actions into rituals of self-love, your life stops feeling like an endless list of obligations and starts feeling like a work in conscious construction. Don't allow your life to be an accident. Don't let chance, haste, or inertia decide for you. Your existence can be a work of art if you choose to design it that way. Every conscious choice, every act of order, every ritual of presence is one more brushstroke on the canvas of your life. You don't need to control everything, but you can direct your energy toward what truly matters. The sacred isn't reserved for temples or great moments. It's in the way you choose to live the everyday. Organization, when born from love and not from pressure, becomes a spiritual act. Not to be seen, not to be applauded, but because you know in the deepest part that every day deserves to be lived with reverence. You deserve to live with reverence. This journey of transformation through Stoic organization isn't about achieving perfection. It's about creating a life of intention, dignity, and purpose. Each of these 15 lessons builds upon the others, creating a comprehensive framework for living that honors both your potential and your humanity. The Stoics understood that true freedom comes not from external circumstances, but from internal mastery. When you take responsibility for your life, design your time with intention, create meaningful rituals, organize your environment, think strategically, curate what you consume, cultivate healthy relationships, care for your body, manage your finances wisely, use technology consciously, accept setbacks gracefully, and treat order as an act of love. You're not just organizing your life, you're transforming it. Remember that this transformation is ongoing. There's no finish line where you arrive and everything becomes effortless. Instead, there's the daily choice to live with consciousness, to choose intention over reaction, to build rather than drift. Some days will be easier than others, but each day offers a new opportunity to apply these principles and move closer to the person you're meant to become. The power to change your life has always been within you. These Stoic principles simply provide the framework to access and apply that power consistently. Your life is too valuable to be lived on autopilot, too precious to be left to chance, too important to be anything less than a masterpiece of conscious creation. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. The transformation begins with a single choice, a single moment of taking responsibility, a single act of organizing your inner world so that your outer world can reflect the order, peace, and purpose you carry within. Your best life is waiting not for perfect conditions, but for your decision to begin creating it now, one conscious choice at a time. The journey toward a life of order, meaning, and fulfillment starts today. Take the first step, and then the next, and then the next. Your future self is counting on the choices you make right now.